What kind of elk attacks people? Aren't they supposed to be peaceful to humans? Like seriously, I've never heard of an elk attacking anything before. Maybe defending itself against a bear, or two elks fighting to attract a mate. But an elk attacking a runner seems to have never happened, ever, Trey said as the stomped on fresh snow-white powder. It's unlikely, but the elk punctured and ripped his stomach open. Jameson was nearly dead when those other hikers found him. Had to pump him with every drug from the hospital to get him back to stable condition, and they are not even sure if he will stay there. Can't even begin to imagine his hospital bill when he finally gets out. Might not even be worth it. Dip responded to him, now bringing up his flashlight toward the tops of tree branches, flashing an owl which flew away from the sudden light, causing a light dusting to fall down on top of them. Rude. So the captain just wants us to kill this thing then? Do we do this every time there's a wild animal attack? Trey asked Dip. Well, most of the time. I think with how bizarre this case is, and the fact that the women who got slashed and killed while on a hike had a similar story to Jameson, the chief just wants the public to see this monster killed. Dip responded to him. Do you really think an elk killed that woman? Trey questioned. No. Dip chuckled at even the thought of it. But blaming it on an animal ends the case quickly. Plus, I am not turning down an order from a chief. With the amount of layoffs going on, I could see the police force following suit, and then finding a job in this market might be a nightmare. Dip added to his original comment, then feeling the cold winter breeze strike across his body. Crazy how a week ago it was nearly 60 degrees. Now we got 5 inches of snow to maneuver and 20-degree weather to deal with. Dip went complaining. So chondrin? It sounds like a bird species. The chondrin bird of South America gets hunted by an anaconda. Will said, interrupting Dip, the third time it had happened since he started, but made it feel like he was doing it all the time. I looked over at Dip, an annoyed expression with his eyes squinted at Will, who he could barely see in the dimly lit room. Myself giving him the same expression. Yup, Dip Chondrin, that is my new legal name. Dip said to him, then continuing his story. We kept. So why did you pick Chondrin? Will said, interrupting again, a small quench in Dip's fist making his emotion toward my brother very clear. Chondrin, Oregon is where I met my wife. It was the summer of '98, beautiful time to meet someone at a winery. I remember it vividly, eating grapes that tasted of cotton candy as we sipped wine, watching the sun till it went down over the ocean in the far distance. Satisfied? Dip said, then abruptly ending his words. That's really nice, Dip, I added. Did you ever get to say goodbye before Perry took us? No, I didn't, Nick. She died a couple years ago. Car accident. One I hope to believe she didn't suffer. Dip responded to my question. Oh, I'm sorry, I said to him, unsure of what to say next, dearly hoping Dip would continue his story of how he met Alos, and that Nick would stop with any of his annoying interruptions. A few seconds passed before Dip said another word. Sorry if that was a little morbid. I don't talk about her much. Why I never mentioned anything to you the past 2 years. But with us technically dying together and being transported across the country by an alien, I suppose we form a bond stronger than most people I spend time with previously, Dip added. I smiled to him, hoping he saw it, but with the amount of light the single light bulb let out, it was a coin flip of a chance. That goes for you too, Will, even if you do annoy me sometimes, Dip said to him. So do we get to pick our name out as well? Will asked, myself sighing as he didn't even understand the social etiquette and respect he should be showing to Dip for what he just said. Yes, I am working with someone in Minnesota to get documents and drop them off to me. They are creating new birth certificates, social security, and a bunch of other legalized documents for you two, and soon you will be able to pick your own names. Dip responded to him. Smob, Will said. My name is going to be Rob Smob, he then exclaimed. Who? Dip started to say. You can't be a comic book character, Will. That sounds stupid. 100% the government will know that's a made-up name. I said to him. Who the hell is Rob Smob? Dip asked the group. He's from a comic book series called Runaway. The creator, Zack something something, made it, and it includes a bunch of runaway superheroes being hunted for their powers but still make time to save people. And Rob Smob is one of these characters. I explained to Dip. The confusion of what even a comic book was probably being a valid question, let alone an entire series, might be too much for Dip to understand. No. Well, you can't be Rob Smob. I say, use your first name, then pick a random last name. And make sure Nick agrees with it. You two are brothers. We'll act like brothers. Might as well keep the last name the same between you two. Dip said to both of us. Okay, Will and Nick Smob then. Will said out loud. I say give it some time to think. This is permanent, not like the video games or whatever you do on your computers. You can't restart or redo. Your name is my point. Now let's get back to story time. Dip said, continuing. We walked deeper and deeper into the woods, with most of the vegetation below our feet dead, making a satisfying crumbling sound as our feet pressed against it. We then came across them. My first instinct being wolf imprints, seeing the 3 imprinted toe prints, and then the larger heel pushed down into the snow. But as I stared, I realized it was something else. And the size alone would have given that away, as my palm print was dwarfed by the animal print, and 4 long indents, which I assumed were claws, stretched for nearly the length of a pencil, even coming to a fine point at end, as if the wood shavings were freshly cut. I looked upon the path from which these prints were laid out, curving along a road of trees. These are bigger than Bear, a decent size bigger. Trey said to me as I jotted down the rough outline of these prints. Let's follow them, but keep your gun ready, safety off. I said to him, knowing that whatever had created these prints were nearby. We started to walk alongside the tracks, as if they were a river and we were searching for the inevitably lake it would lead to. Eventually, the tracks started to overlap themselves. The cut-open deer carcass situated against the tree with most of the intestines spilling out being the reason. I knelt down next to the deer, the insides free of any rotting and barely any smell. I then checked the blood that had dripped down from its body, still on the first layer of snow, barely soaked in. This is fresh. Must have only died 12 to 18 hours ago. Trey said, myself remembering Trey had grown up hunting with his dad, so knowing how fresh a deer corpse was something familiar with him. Well, let's find out what killed Bambi, I said, now moving against the tracks which had straightened out again, moving 30 feet away and knowing Trey was running toward me to catch up. I then could hear it, a faint crunch of vegetation from behind, impossible to be from Trey, who stood directly behind me. My heart dropped, knowing something was there. I turned around, seeing something I'd never seen before. So why would Aloes leave with Perry? Will said, interrupting for the 10th time today. My God, Will, just shut up and let Dip finish the story. I said to him. What, it's fine. Not like we have anything else better to do than to talk. IDK, Dip, do you need to leave within the next 5 hours? Is me taking a 5-minute break from a story that big of a deal? Will asked. You're a jackass, I said to him. Yeah, sure, I'm a jackass for making a valid point. Why the hell did Aloes leave with Perry? Did they have a close friendship from the 20-minute they knew each other that I didn't see while with both of them? Sure, they kind of saved the world together. We all did. But that doesn't make someone drop everything to leave, right? Will stated, firming his stance. Aloes didn't drop anything, though, Dip said. He had us, though. That's something. Will rebutted to him. Aloes didn't have much of anything, and he sure wasn't great with personal connections. Ever since I knew him, he talked as if Earth and this parallel universe, from how he described it and where you came from, as if it was just a place that he was at, not connecting with anything around him. Like he was on vacation to a place knowing that once he left he would never return. Always made fun of the planets too, talking about the weather always being bad, or the fact that nothing on Earth was attractive enough for him to have sex with it. Yeah, but me. Will said faintly, realizing he might not have meant as much to Alos as he once thought he had. Dip comforted Will, saying, I'm sorry, Will. I don't think much would have made Alos stay. Now I turned around, seeing the white glowing eyes and the small chimp size and frame of the being looking over at us. That's when I first met Alos. The little creature stayed still, frozen in front of the deer me and Trey had already passed, myself not feeling much of a threat since I could tell that the being was barely taller than my kneecap. Trey, however, had pulled his gun out of his holster, now aiming it at the creature but in a ready position, straight-armed on his hip. We were taught in the academy to do this to show intimidation to any threat, also beneficial since it was the fastest movement to a shot-ready stance. We slowly approached the creature, the white eyes seemingly getting dimmer as we approached, maybe a way that it focused on us. I'm not a threat, we heard the creature say as we approached within 10 feet. I could get a better view. The creature had short black fur like a well-groomed dog, with some muscle tone on its body visible against the flashes of light that reflected from the snow onto the being. Who are you? I stated to the creature. Please just let me go. It's my first time here on this planet. Please have mercy. The creature continued to beg toward me and Trey. Trey now put his gun back into the holster, apparently convinced this creature was no longer a threat, myself having my own suspicions. Do you know where you come from? Do you have parents? Trey questioned, myself wanting to ask him if he truly believed this X-File monster could be just a child in a costume in 40-degree weather. Galen sent me. He told me to find a Wendigo. The being stuttered. A what? I asked. A Wendigo. The being repeated. It's what came to your world, has giant antlers on top of its head. Did that. It finished, now pointing to the deer carcass. We've been tracking a Wendigo, says an alien creature. Normal day in the office. I say out loud, Trey looking as astonished as ever. So what are you guys going to do to me? If I don't find the Wendigo, Galen is 100% going to kill me. The creature went on, a shortness of breath between words. If it was human, that would be signs of a pre-panic attack. You're going to be fine. My name is Dip. This is my partner, Trey. I say to it, a brief introduction to hopefully calm the little guy's nerves. Alos, the being said back, then looking down at the trail, seeing the footsteps. I followed his eyes, stating, we can follow the trail, unless you have a better idea of how to get to your Wendigo. Alos shook his head. I like your way. Following behind me, who started to lead, Trey in the back of the pack. We walked for some time, enough silence from the quiet dead of winter forest to ask Alos, so what exactly is this world that you and this Wendigo came from? Alos looked back, responding, a sort of parallel universe. Not exactly sure of the why or how, just that it's a rare case among planets. I think it has something to do with a black hole opening, creating two instances of what it swallows. Your reality and my reality. Then you have beings that can create tunnels or portals in between these worlds. It finished. What kind of beings can make these portals? I asked the being. Mostly those of Indian descent. The main one I work with is the Ponca tribe. I know they reside here, reside near the same location in the alternate world as well. It replied back. Trey made a statement. The Ponca tribe. That's the tribe. That warned us about the deer. They know what this thing is. I interrupted him. I pondered about if I could truly be mad at them. Had they betrayed me or did their best at warning me without revealing what might possibly be the biggest scientific discovery of all time? My mind quickly stopped processing that thought, now noticing a raw, strong odor in the air. It smelled awful, like the deer corpse, but 1,000 times worse, as if it had been rotted for days while being burned on the side of a road non-stop. Maybe a skunk pissed on it too. Maybe that might be too much. We then came across the source of the stench. An animal, mostly a deer shape, with long antlers that I can almost guarantee were longer than my wingspan, and a wolf snout with some teeth showing. I chilled just looking at it. If I was thinking Alos was a monster when I first saw it, then this thing would be a king of them. I looked again at its body, the length nearly being the same height of some young adult trees that were erect, the skin tight showing the bones and dense muscles on the creature. "What the hell do we do?" I said to the group. Everyone stood in silence, maybe taking a second by looking at this freak of nature, maybe too scared to awake it. "I can shoot it. A bullet in its head should kill it," I asked, looking down at Alos to see if there were any arguments on his end. There were. "This thing is powerful. Your weapons on Earth, I have heard, are weak, at least to the beings from my world. I should call my boss." It finished. I shook my head, debating in my head if I should listen to the creature or just deep fire into the thing. My answer leaning more to shooting as every second passed, but another being making up its own decision of what to do. "Galen. Galen, I found it," Alos exclaimed in the woods. "What are you doing? You're going to wake the damn thing." I spouted to Alos, pushing him and causing him to fall in the snow. I then looked up, my biggest fear becoming a reality. The eyes of the creature, Wendigo, looked deep into me. I could feel my spirit inside be depleted of any hope of my survival. The only strength, I'd raised my pistol and pulling the trigger. 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shots, each one, and I know this for a fact, striking the creature. I exhaled in horror, the bullets taking nearly no effect as the creature opened its mouth, myself now seeing the second row of razor-sharp teeth in its mouth. "Run! Run!" I exclaimed, grabbing Trey and pulling him away, leaving Alos on the ground. We ran nearly 200 yards, the earth still silent, no screams behind us of Alos being ripped together by the boogeyman's pet. We looked back and searched for his body, which was now gone from where it had laid, the Wendigo gone as well. Have they teamed up? A thought to myself, feeling isolated and vulnerable in the woods. A swoosh then came through the woods ahead of me and Trey. I looked forward, seeing the gigantic but majestical frame of the Wendigo prance through the trees, its shoulder grazing underneath the bottom of leaves. It was chasing something, Alos. We started to trail behind the creature, looking back a stupid decision. But in the time to discover a great scientific discovery, it was 100% worth it. We followed until we saw the Wendigo flipped, its legs tied together by a white sandy rope as if it was a pig waiting to be burned under an open flame. The legs then slowly started to separate outward, rope surrounding each end of the leg as it extended, more and more until the Wendigo screeched. I clamped my hands over my ears, mimicking earmuffs, but still hearing the pain-filled shrieks of the creature as if it was a bear just caught in a trap. The screeching then turned to a sharp rip, the flesh of the body and legs separating, and the loud thump of the Wendigo landing on its back without any appendages horrified me. "What witchcraft has been done?" Trey asked me. I moved in closer. Another dumb decision, but one I justified for the discovery of science, ignoring whatever Trey asked me, myself only focused on what had ripped the legs off that animal. We approached the animal, a small portal opening in front of it, and the familiar vines reappeared, wrapping the body and pushing it through. "You need to leave." A voice boomed behind us, the source being a large human figure covered in feathers common of a Native American attire. "Who are you?" I asked, a sense of calm seeing Alos hunkered behind the figure, safe and sound. "I gave you orders. Leave and do not speak of what you saw." The Indian went, now raising up his palm and opening a new portal from inside. Before stepping inside, he looked back at Alos. "Come," he bellowed. Alos followed his order, skipping to the portal entrance and before leaving looking back at me and Trey, giving a slight wave before jumping through with the Indian. That Indian could make portals, and he was from the smoke world? I asked Dip. Yes, Nick. He replied to me, now myself giving a glance at Will. What, am I missing something? Can you show him Will? I asked my brother, knowing that Dip had missed some things as he was gone. Will opened his palm, a spark coming through then enlarging into an orb of white and sandy dust and smoke swirling, encapsulated in the sphere. Will then extended his arm, the orb shooting away from him and into the wall, creating a hole. You dumbass, Dip yelled at him in response. He stood up and walked over, pushing a hay bale over to the hole and covering it. It's nearly 40 degrees outside. We will freeze to death if you do that again. Will explained to him, just wanted to show you what I can do. Not great at controlling it yet. I can see that. Dip responded, myself zoning out now. I took a second, looking over at the hay on the ground from where I had slept the last 2 nights. I stared at the bump in the straw, knowing that is where the journal Alos had given me before he left. He told me these words, pay attention. Myself, even in more confusion, as I saw my brother on the next open page. It's only been 48 hours. Are you sure you both want this? Dip said, rolling his eyes, knowing that we both didn't give it enough time to think it over. Yeah, positive, Will said to him, reassuring his feeling and my partial one. I don't have that much of a say. I don't want to change it to begin, but with the government keeping an eye on the last name of anything Gibbs, I don't think we have another option, I said, making my peace. The paperwork for it being finalized won't be here for another week. You sure you don't want to give it another 2 days? Dip urging us to reconsider. No, Dip, it's fine. I think I know best since it's my last name, Will said joyfully. Also, Nick's your brother. Dip interrupted. I'm fine. It's just better to get this over with, I said, compliant to my brother wishes. Well, it's done. We are now going to be known as Will and Nick's Mob, Will exclaimed, clapping his hands together and dancing in a circle, the dust from the old barn's roof falling from the sky as if it was the first snow. Watch out, I then exclaimed to Will. Maybe a second later the old dried-up rat or maybe bat feces from above shooting down on Will's head. He looked at it and then complained to Dip. You said we were going to get a house. When are we moving out of this dump? He then moved his hands up into his head, brushing over the hairs and making sure all of the pest feces were absent. In a week, it's important to buy this home in cash, in my own name. And it won't be much of an upgrade, but no raining shit and no straw mattresses soon, I promise. Dip replied, now walking down the barn and grabbing the scarf seated by the door. He wrapped it around, like how a snake would wrap itself around prey, masking his identity. I'll be back in an hour. If I'm not back, try calling me. If I don't answer, remember the escape plan and get to the backup location. If I'm not there within 10 hours, take the money and run. He let out to the group, myself and Will nodding, memorizing his speech from the last 5 times he left to go get food and supplies. Bring back a candy bar, and make sure it's not melted when it gets here. Will chimed. Dip nodded, then leaving. I'm home. I called from outside, opening up the metal door barely attached to its hinges. Hello, I called again, now being pushed further into the home, moving out of the way of the dining table that was set 3 feet in front of the entryway door. Still in my head, a horrible place to put a table, but in a trailer home, there's not much room for anything. I still had heard no answer from Will, but could hear the beeps and boops of his video game still going on in the room at the end. Stay back, Dip said to me, unclipping the gun from his belt and walking down the hallway. He opened the door slowly, myself not 5 feet behind him. A sigh of relief seeing Will in the same position he was 2 hours ago, playing his video game. You need to call back when we call for you, Dip said, scolding him. Why, my video game makes enough noise you can hear it. That should be enough for you to know I'm okay. Will smart-assily replied, "No, we are still in danger, Will. We need to make sure we stay in constant good communication. The little noises from your little machine aren't going to cut it." Dip stated back with intent. "No, we don't." Will argued, "And those noises are me beating the snot out of John Wykes, the dangerous outlaw. I just saved the town. Plus, we aren't in danger. We live with a bunch of nobodies, haven't had any sign that anything is looking for us for 2 whole months." Dip folded his arms. "So you think since it's been 2 very short months that we can get lazy? I don't think the government has truly figured out what happened in Oregon, and the only people that can explain it are me and Nick. And the only person that can show them is you. So, yeah, I don't think the time to get lazy is now." Will responded laughing, "The government? If those agents come, I'll just use my powers and explode them. I'm getting better at using them. I can make shapes now and have control of how to project it. I'd beat the easily just like Dummy Wykes." He ended, resuming the game he had paused and moving on to the next level. Dip then walked over to the TV, pulling the plug on both the console and the TV itself, sparking a fuse in Will, who stood up. "What the hell are you doing?" he yelled. "Keep your voice down. We don't want to make a scene here. And you're grounded from here on out until you learn how to act properly." Dip said back to him, now standing over him, "You're an idiot. Grounded, what do you want me to do all day? Sit in this room that's barely fits us 3? I'd rather go live in the barn." I looked around, his point making sense as Will and Dip barely had enough room for themselves, with the 2 mattresses on the side of the room taking up most of the space for where myself and Will slept, and the single lawn chair in the middle that was placed in front of the small TV. "This is true, Dip. He needs to get out more. Do more than just video games. Let's have him get a job, make some money, and feel productive," I suggested to Dip. "You want him working a job? Do you think he can handle a job? Plus, with a job, he's there for a set amount of time with limited flexibility. What if someone finds him? What happens then, Nick?" Dip responded, his focus on me. "You said we need to start living normal lives. This is what those costs. Risks. Same thing as us signing up to be private investigators for UFO-related activities." I argued back with him. "Yeah, but that's different. We need to be on the lookout for anything that might have come through a portal. That's why you have your journal. Those monsters that we've encountered, that Gallon being. Those things just don't go away." Dip said, maybe taking a second to realize how deep we were in true shit. "Give me some time to think about it." Dip went, now kneeling down and replugging the TV and gaming console back into the wall, the video game quickly reappearing. "So, do you have any prior work experience?" the interviewer asked. "No, but I do have experience of beating level 70 on Rocket Man. Only 10% of players reach that level according to the badge I got." Will said to him, seated in the back room of a store which had been converted to a small office. "Rocket Man, care to explain what that is?" the interviewer asked Will. "It's a video game where you hack rockets on your wrist and shoot at zombies. They then explode and you save the world," Will explained to him. "And you help people in this game, that makes you feel good to help?" The interviewer continued to question him. "Yes, what's the point of doing something if you can't help?" Will eagerly said. The interviewer took a note, then proceeded to the next question. "So, for your schooling, where did you go to school?" "Well, I'm homeschooled. This was done by my stepdad, Dip. Taught me everything I needed to know." Will answered. "Yes, I spoke with him. He seems to be a good man, your stepfather. Really persuasive that you find a job so you start your employment journey." The interviewer stated to Will, him responding, "Well, that's Dip. Always saying help when he and my brother brings in food. Have to pause my game and everything to help them, kind of annoying. But I managed to bring and sort all the food out super well. At least to the point no one questions me." The interviewer took another note, then asked, "So why did you come to Nebraska? From your stepfather, it seems you're from the West Coast." Wanted a change of scenery, I guess, Will said, nervous on his answer for the question. Well, that concludes all my questions. You should expect to hear a call back soon regarding your employment. You seem competent enough to me. The interviewer said to Will, walking to the door and opening it for him, pushing him to leave. Will came home that night eager of his new employment. So were you nervous about the interview? I always hated talking about myself. Seemed like you spend too much time trying to hype yourself up to be this person for people who just need a solid person for the job. I asked him, watching as he slurped up the spaghetti noodles. The second time he has done that without wiping away the blob of sauce on his cheek. No, not at all. It was easy, I was honest, and we talked about video games, he said, chewing the food in his mouth as he spoke. Disgusting. Video games, I questioned, asking myself how a mid-aged manager would even know what a video game is. It's not like Dip knew. Yeah, we talked about me beating Rocket Man and how I helped save people in the game, Will responded to me. I guess that makes sense. A part of bagging groceries would be helping people. Did he say anything else? I answered and asked him. Yeah, he said I seemed competent. He said myself, nearly puffing spaghetti sauce out my nose as I smirked. What? Will questioned. Nothing. It's nothing. You'll do great. I replied to him. Will, I heard Dip call over from the couch/bed he had, with his personal laptop laid upon, well, his lap. What? Will called back to him, still the spaghetti blob on his face. Hold on, wipe that shit off you, you look stupid, Dip said after first glancing at him and seeing it. I was going to tell him, I said to myself. Will followed his instructions, wiping to blob clean off and repeating, what? Have you felt any presence or anything strange lately, mostly relating to your home world? Dip asked him. No, Will replied, then asking, is Alice back? Is he back home with us? A tone matching a puppy seeing its owner after a weekend vacation. No, he's not here, thank you. Nick, come over here, Dip stated to me now. I walked over, himself positioning the laptop in front of me now, seeing the URL UFO Watchers Are Us, and then reading the page. Fontenelle Forest, that's somewhere close, isn't it? I asked Dip. About 2 hours north of here. Did you read the amount of sighting, too? Over 10, something strange is going up there. He replied back. And the only descriptions is a small Martian man. I replied, Perry, I suggested to the group. He's not going to try to kill us, is he? Will asked out loud. What? Dip asked. It's nothing, I assured him. We need to go there, Dip said, changing the subject. I nodded my head. I'll bring my journal. If this thing is from that place, it will burn itself into the pages. I told him, now leaving to the back of the trailer and grabbing it. What about me? Will asked. Am I going to? We need you to stay, guard the trailer and yourself. Also best to prepare for your first day of work, Dip said to him. He then walked out of the trailer, myself following, knowing we would get there at nearly 8 and have to start searching through the night. How do I prepare for my first day at work? I heard Will ask as we left. Fontenelle Forest wasn't really a forest. More like a giant corn maze where the center of the maze had a bunch of trees, but still no rivers or hills to climb. Hell, I don't even think the trails were dirt, it was paved. Lane Parks Department. We arrived at 8, maybe 8:10 to be exact, and was met with headlights upon headlights on cars cramped in the small parking lot of the park entrance. As we got out, we realized it was going to be more than just me and Dip searching these woods tonight. We stepped out, myself checking my shoes and making sure the laces were tight, reaching the first trail and being passed by another group entering, searching for the great mystery of extraterrestrial life. That search lasted for nearly 6 hours before it would end. The way me and Dip found out is by Marco, who we had befriended on the trail and learned he was from a UFO explorer group in the area, alerted us that one of his teammates were next to the people who had shot and killed the alien. Me, Dip, and our new friend rushed back to the main entrance, seeing where they had laid the body on the gravel road, the searchers circling it like hawks snapping pictures at every angle. I walked toward it, peering into its black bead eyes which had remained open. I then looked at the body, not passing 2.5 feet in length, dressed in a beige robe. Its skin was a deep forest green, probably why it took so long for people to find it, and wrinkled. An old man wrinkled. I walked away after getting the information I needed, now going to the car with Dip and opening the journal. I moved to the very last page, careful to not show the image of Will on the prior page for whatever reason. Maybe not to think that Will was evil in Dip's mind. We then stared at the engraved image of the alien creature in the back, the image matching the initial description I had given it. I closed it, knowing it was the same creature that had come from the smoke world. A helicopter whir then came above us, myself and nearly everyone else in the parking lot, seeing the massive chopper dressed in a camo print descending down in the open space. "Step away from the being," a voice came over the loudspeaker. The feet of the helicopter touched down a minute later. A full team of 6 wearing hazmat suits stepped out and approached the body. Another 6 came after them, creating a circle around the team, and then the alien as they surrounded it, their guns pointed up and at the people. The entire operation was gone under 2 minutes, with the body they had come for being gone as well. I knew they were hiding something. The government is always hiding something. A man cheered after the helicopter had left the scene. The comment led to an agreement uproar of those surrounding, myself knowing that this could lead to us being exposed again. I looked over at Dip, a slightly worried expression on his face. Could he be thinking the same thing? Without another road, we got to the car, driving all the way home. The next day, I went to go pick Will up from his first day. I was excited to hear from him, as me and Dip decided it would be best to lay low and see if any news about what had happened yesterday makes it to public ear. So far, not a word. I reached the store, a small town grocery store with barely enough cars in the parking lot to make it even seem like a store. I walked in, seeing Will at the end of a stall bagging groceries. I walked over to him, Will being in a conversation with a girl who seemed to be my age, scanning a can of beans for the customer in line. I waited for the customer to leave, then asked Will, "How much longer are you going to be?" Knowing his shift ended 3 minutes ago. "Just until someone else arrives. I have to help Hannah," he replied. I looked over at the girl, who looked at me, realizing this had to be the Hannah he spoke about. "Hi, I'm Will's brother," I said to her, a nod and a quick hi back being the only thing. A minute later, Will's replacement got to the stall, and a minute after that, we were back in the car driving home. We now pulled in the driveway of our trailer, Will jumping out of the car and going into the house. I entered a moment later, hearing the classical sound of the PS booting up, knowing he was going to spend the rest of the day gaming. "It's a good thing. He worked a full day today. He can do what he wants," Dip said to me while on his couch/bed. He scooted over, inviting me to take a seat next to him as he reached for his laptop. He put it in front of me, the same UFO Watchers R Us website, but now on a different page. It was a map with a bunch of pins all across the UFIT, nearly covering the map itself with each pin image. "There has to be 400 of those pins," I commented to Dip. 436, all ranging from the last 2.5 months. Dip replied, "Okay, and what are they of?" "Just every UFO sighting across the country on a map. This makes sense why there's so many lot of crazy people seeing stuff," I asked him. Dip shook his head, letting out a slight sigh before saying, "These are specific to the details of a small green man being seen. Specific to the being from Fontenelle." "Did you pack a swimsuit?" Dip said intently to Will from across the trailer. "You asked about that already, and I did, so stop asking about it." Will said back, annoyed from the rising tension that had been brewing for the last 3 hours. "Well, you told me you put sunscreen in the large backpack." I unpacked everything from it looking for it, and never found it. So I really do need to ask twice about this. Dip scowled back at him. Asshole, Will said under his breath, Dip hearing it faintly and rolling his eyes, now moving back to checking inventory that had been laid out on his bed. 4 sleeping bags, 2 tents, 1 portable grill, 3 fishing poles. A buzz then went in my pocket and I pulled out my flip phone. Yes, flip phone, the most advanced technology back in the 90s, reading the name Hannah, who had just messaged me. I unlocked the phone, navigating to her message and then proceedingly opening the door of the trailer home, seeing her car parked next to Dip's SUV. You sure my car will be safe here over the weekend? She asked me. Yeah, this place is totally safe. Sure, the homes aren't the nicest, and the usual pothead wanders around at 1, but we don't have any reports of people breaking into cars or houses. I replied to her, assuring this 3-day trip would be a good idea. AM or PM, she asked me. For what? I responded to her. AM or PM for when the pothead lurks around. She asked, giving more details. I smiled to her. I say both time periods. They don't really follow a strict schedule. She smiled, then went up to me and kissing me on the cheek, a convenient spot and a place she marked for herself. Possibly from the 100th time she kissed that exact spot within the span of 3 months. She then walked inside the trailer, Dip greeting her and then immediately yelling again at Will, who complained back to him. I stood right out front, staring at the cloudless sky, knowing the weather would be perfect for a little retreat. It was Dip's idea to begin with. A 3-day weekend in a June month, camping out at a place for some relaxation. This would have been the farthest distance we would have traveled since 5 or 6 months, with the last long-distance trip was Perry dropping us off on our new home. I thought about him, Alos, knowing Will still had thoughts about him. I then thought about my parents, my abrupt departure from my home, knowing they thought I was lost, but the risk of reconnecting being too strong. I just wish they knew how much I miss them. Love you, Dad. Love you, Mom. I need your help in here, Nick. Stop staring at the ants outside and carry these things to the car. I heard Dip call from outside, walking into the house and seeing at him point at the tents. I grabbed each one with one hand, an impressive task if they were already built, but weighing 30 pounds and being the size of a duffel bag folded up, it was not much different than moving airport luggage. I walked outside, Hannah following me and making the comment, "We get our own tent, right? Now dropping the packed tents in." Yes, that was my biggest deal with Dip when he talked about this. She smiled, then asking, "You think it will be a good trip for Will? You think you can catch a lot for him?" I smiled, knowing that she had cared about my sometimes stupid brother whom she worked with, answering, "It's his first fish trip ever. He didn't even know what it was when I brought it up to him. Dip had to buy a pole and act it out like it was a charades game for him to understand. So I think if we catch one fish, it would be a successful trip." We left nearly an hour later, with Will making another complaint to Dip on why they have to share a tent together. Dip's response was simple, so me and Hannah can do the same thing we've been doing together on our late-night movie trips. I had thanked Dip also many times for setting it up, more times than I could count on my excited hands. The drive to Lake Oka was about 5 hours, passing through most of Iowa before coming close to its border. Dip then backed into our campsite, which was set 10 feet from a public road, and then another 10 feet was a public sand beach where I believe half of our days would be spent. I got out excited, then moving to the back of the car and pulling out the tent, ready to get it set up. I spent 30 minutes with Hannah setting it up, Dip and Will catching up with us in time frame even though they started 5 minutes later. After moving my suitcase and other supplies into the tent, I got changed into a swimsuit. Me and Hannah switching out of the tent for privacy, then jogged over to the lake. The water was warm, surprising for how north we were, but also crystal clear like glass. I dove in, myself pushing myself against the soft sand bottom out while Hannah walked in stunningly. So stunningly, I didn't even notice Will, who was running behind her, now kicking up the water and bumping into her side, causing her to fall in. Will then leapt out toward me, screaming, "Boom!" which I guess was the word he used for cannonball, causing waves to push up against me. I spit some water out, myself seeing Hannah annoyed at the little child of my brother, then seeing him rise his head up for air, a little smirk on his face. "This is fun," he said, myself instantly forgiving him, knowing this is probably the first time he's ever swum at a lake. Hannah then came out, "Father, I think Will getting her hair and general body wet, warming her up to the idea of joining us." We all now sat in a circle, our feet paddling underneath as Dip pulled a lawn chair out and placed it onto the sand, watching from afar with a book opened in front of him. We swam together for another 2 hours before stars started to sprinkle on the lake waves, signaling us it was time to settle in for the night. By this time, Dip had already left, having built a fire with a couple of hamburgers already cooked waiting for us. "Thank you," the three of us said in unison, grabbing the plate he had made for everyone then sitting around the fire. Dip then said to the group, "S'mores are in the car, passenger side." Will left immediately, only knowing of s'mores from a survival game he played. He pulled out the bag of marshmallows, then grabbed a stick of the ground, inserting and putting the mellow out which roasted for 4 minutes before he pulled it back, then leaving and coming back with a fully intact s'more. I smiled, watching him eat his creation and from his expression knowing it was worth it for him. Will probably had 7 more s'mores after that, with Dip having to intervene so he wouldn't get sick. Me and Hannah both respectively having 2 ourselves. We then turned out the fire, me and Hannah going into our tent alone, myself seeing Dip enter his with Will already tucked in when I zipped mine up. The night for me went by happily and calmly, the warmness of Hannah next to me and the slight buzz of bugs making my life feel like there was nothing wrong. For Dip, the night was much of the same, with the noises being the same, and Will pushing himself away from Dip. Dip then felt something, a object laid upon his leg, striking him. He looked down, seeing Will's foot for a second before it retreated. He kept watching, the other leg now striking Dip. "Hey," Dip said out loud, hoping to stop whatever little run in his sleep dance Will was doing. "Stop, don't come," Will said groggily. Dip now reached out his hand, laying it on Will's shoulder and gently rocking him, hoping to get him back to sleep. For a second, it worked. Then Will instantly swiped at his hand and stood up, his head hitting the top of the mesh ceiling. Will now panted, seeing Dip, who was concerned for him, saying, "Calm down, you're okay." "No," Will said, shaking his head. "Something's different. Something's here. I don't know how they slept the rest of the night. Dip really only told me that first half and failed to disclose the second. He told me this early, saying, 'Nick, we gotta talk for a second.' Then leading me away from me and Hannah, who sat around the now extinguished fire. On our separate conversation, he asked me, 'Has Will talked about experiencing anything with you lately? He seemed spooked last night.' I could only tell him what I knew, which was nothing, noting to him that I would keep an eye on him during the hike we planned for the day. Dip replied to that, 'Thank you, and if he needs something, let me know. Also, big bug get to you.' Then chuckling, poking at his own neck on the left side. I did the same motion on my own neck, feeling the raised skin, knowing Hannah had left that hickey from last night. I then went to my own tent, digging into my own bag and pulling out the journal, still absent of anything new. I put it back, grabbing the bug spray and handing it around, ensuring everyone got sprayed before we began our hike. The hike lasted for around 2 hours, with some hilly and rocky terrain, but nothing we couldn't handle. The plus side of it, too, was that trees covered the trail, so only minimal bits of the hot sun could hit us. We still returned drenched in sweat, myself blaming the humidity of the area. Me, Hannah, and Will decided it would be best to cool down in the lake. Dip saying, "I'll go get some firewood. I am thinking hot dogs tonight." A few minutes later, he left the campsite, myself being splashed by Will. He drove to the nearby building about a mile down from the campsite. It was a small brick building, which I think held restrooms and was the only permanent building within a 4-mile radius. On the side was a metal container, with the electronics to open once you slipped money in, like a wood vending machine. Dip parked his car right in front of it, himself being alone as he walked up to the machine. He slid a $5 bill into the electronic machine, then the lock popping with a mechanical click, and Dip pushing the gate open, grabbing a bundle inside. Amazing how far Earth technology has progressed. A voice then said from beyond the corner of the building. Dip walked over, seeing a slender masculine figure leaned up against the brick, dressed in a black and white suit. His slender white hands cupped in front of his mouth, now putting them down, revealing the black cigarette that had been lit. "Yeah, real interesting. A machine can lock and unlock something," Dip replied. The figure then moved his head, staring at Dip as he responded, "Much more advanced than the last time I was here." What are you?" Dip now said, a slight panic in his voice. "Who are you here with, Dip? Before I answer your questions, you must be nice and answer mine." The figure went. "I'm with my kids," Dip said confidently. The figure chuckled. "If we are to lie, then I will lie. I'm just another human, out here enjoying my day." "What do you want with them?" Dip said. "Not them, him. The one you spend your time with that doesn't belong. I think you know who that is." The figure said, now pushing against the brick and moving his body, directly facing Dip now. At this position, Dip could see the figure better, a nearly ghost-white skin tone, dressed in a faintly stripped suit with small, amber-lighted buttons. The figure then walked closer to Dip, its expression reminding him of a wolf hunting prey. Dip then tossed the firewood bundle from his hand in front of the figure, landing in its path. The figure leaned over, picking it up as Dip watched the oak wood start to charcoal in the figure's hand, turning to a black only the night could match. It now stood in front of him, Dip slightly looking up at the figure to make eye contact. "I know you know." The figure went then stepping back, also letting go of the firewood, and it dropped between them. Dip buckled down, picking up the piece and seeing the fingers outlined from the figure burned into parts of the wood. When Dip looked up, the figure was gone of range in the open field he was in, knowing the figure couldn't have hid behind the building. "Son of a bitch," Dip muttered under his breath, now walking back to the car and tossing in the firewood. Dip returned to the campsite, myself beating him by about 2 minutes as Hannah and Will continued to swim for as long as the sun allowed them. I looked at the firewood, noticing the scorched marks on it, asking Dip, "Did we get pre-owned firewood? You must have gotten a steal on it." Dip chuckled, then replying to me, "Let's just enjoy our trip and not worry about the wood for now." The water glistened as he laughed, replaying the joke in his head, then laughing again. And then I said, "You aren't a bull, you're the whole damn rodeo." The 3 other men laughed even harder, not even noticing the line be pulled. They continued to laugh, the pole which the line stemmed from now curving, drawing the attention of one of the men. "Catfish on," he went. "This one looks heavy," he mentioned, jerking the pole up and hoping to hook into the fish's mouth. He felt it tug, then another, then another. He jolted forward, the fish swimming out, farther to the middle of the lake, pulling the man behind the rod. He let go, seeing the pole get lost into the lake, his body tumbling forward, then slipping and falling into the water. He emerged a moment later, a splash from his friend's drink greeting him as he breathed in the lake water. "Got mugged by a fish, buddy," one of the friends said to him. "I swear it's not a woman. Don't swim after her," another friend joked. He drove down the road, possibly the 1,000th time in his career. Enough to the point that even at 2 a.m. while half asleep, his body could navigate the turns around the park effortlessly. However, his reaction time wasn't fast enough for when something came unexpected. He slammed on the brakes, knowing it was already too late, and watched as the trash can bounced off his front bumper, now rolling to the other side of the street. He now looked over, seeing the other trash cans topple down like a chess king now defeated. He then looked more closely, the bags inside being ripped open, exposing the scraps of food camp attendees had left. "Damn raccoons," the security guard muttered, now getting out of the vehicle, grabbing the trash can he had hit and moving it to the rest of the group. "Maintenance can bag these up in the morning," he said to only himself, then exclaiming to the raccoons, which he knew to be nearby, "You happy, you filthy animals. Your food is yours tonight." Then turning around. At the moment he could hear it, the sound of wet flip-flops running on concrete. He turned around, the sound now stopping, expression of confusion on his face, but one where he knew he wasn't paid enough to deal with the situation. He returned back to the Camp Ranger vehicle, making sure the road was cleared and started to drive again, going back to being half asleep. "Seems like a pretty wild night," I told Dip as he sipped the coffee he had just retrieved. "Enough for the morning rangers to be talking about it at the shop. Nice people, though. There's a saying from around here that the Midwest have the nicest people." "I think that's becoming more truthful," Dip replied to my statement. "When are we going swimming? It's getting hot." Will groaned to the group, the sun now directly above us. "Let's go now, enjoy the day," Dip then said, getting up from around the fire pit and going to the car. We drove to a larger lake, one with a wider beach and much cooler water from the fact that it was 100 feet deeper than what we had camped in front of. We enjoyed the cooler waters till nighttime, with the most exciting moment coming from watching a giant bass, at least 3 feet in length, jump from the water and then splash right back in. This feat immediately led to Will asking, "Why do fish jump out of the water? They can't breathe, right?" "Yeah," I answered. "They do it for multiple reasons: to catch prey, attract a mate, for the fun of it, or escape a predator." Will smiled, making the comment, "Looks like he had fun while jumping. Let's go with that." We called it a night hours later, myself and Hannah staying up later than normal, keeping our lips occupied and awake. We then heard something loud enough for at least my best moments alive to grab my attention, and slowly unzipped the tent. I then peeped my head outside, showing Hannah how much of a man I was, hoping nothing would happen. I then saw it, a small creature, not much taller than a raccoon over by our shoes. "Hey, get away from that," I said to the almost lizard-like creature. It was dark, really tough to see. This provoked Hannah to move her head out, seeing the creature then open its mouth wide like an alligator, almost assuring it was a reptile thing, grabbing Hannah's sneaker in, its mouth then running off. "Hey," Hannah called to the creature, then getting out of the tent and chasing after the creature, which went down the paved road. She continued to chase at my call of, "Hannah, wait," to her barely being recognized. I then went to Dip's and Will's tent, slamming on the fabric, spooking them as Dip said, "I will shoot you if I don't know you." I yelled to him, "Something took our stuff. Hannah chased it." That sentence got Dip's attention, pulling him out of the tent, then pulling Will and forcing him to follow him down the road. We caught up to Hannah moments later, her screaming for help, alerting us to her location. We found her in the bottom of the roadside ditch, covered by the tall grass and the fat alligator on top of her, the creature's tail waving. Without hesitation, Dip pulled in front, sliding down the 3-foot hill into the ditch and slamming his foot into the creature's side. The creature rolled off, then snarled at Dip. I watched from afar as it turned into the woods, disappearing into the green foliage. I then went down into the ditch, comforting a now crying Hannah who gripped onto me. She did that on the entire way back to the campsite, now sitting inside the car with me, refusing to go back to the tent. "What was that thing?" she asked me softly, unable to sleep. "I don't know. I really don't know," I replied back. "It wasn't from this planet. It was an alien. Do I sound crazy? She then said. No, not at all. I just wish these things didn't happen, I responded. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, leaving early the next morning after Dip packed everything up. Before leaving, Dip made sure to tell the park rangers about the night's incident, taking it as coyote attack, which made Hannah upset but didn't want to correct Dip. To be fair, I think in her mind the best way to explain this was a coyote. We arrived to our trailer home 3 hours later, myself saying goodbye to Hannah before she drove herself home and making plans to get food the next day, then heading inside. Check the book, Dip said to me once Hannah was 100 meters down the road. I opened the journal, flipping to the back pages and seeing the reptilian creature with its round mouth open, hundreds of small razor teeth enclosed. Ichis, Will said upon seeing it. What? Dip asked him. Ichis, I don't know the full name, but they stayed near the riverbanks in my home world. A lot like the Florida reptiles, alligators, right? Will explained. Yeah, alligators. Okay, so 2 incidents, I said to the group. 3, Dip corrected. What do you mean 3? I asked him. Flip the page, he's in there. Dip replied to me. I flipped the page, seeing a human in a nice dress suit. Who's this? I asked him. I didn't get a name, but I saw him while getting firewood. He's the one that burned it, Dip said to the group. And what did he want? I asked him. Dip dipped down his head, then looking around him, staring at Will at the end of the trailer. Him. And how many times have you tried doing that and have any success? Hannah asked Will as she opened and closed the cash register out of pure boredom. I tried flying 3 times so far. I flap my arms super hard and I swear if I jump and flap, I get a little bit higher. Will responded, spinning the bag wheel. Hannah chuckled. But no successful attempts yet? Yeah, it's stupid. Something keeps me down. I don't get it. Why do birds get to fly but stupid humans can't? Will replied. Gravity, Hannah replied. Will looked confused, which made Hannah laugh even harder. Your homeschool from Dip didn't cover basic science, did it? She asked him. It was a little sped up, Will responded, now looking at the customer who had entered their aisle, plopping down a bag of hard candy on the belt. Hannah moved her foot to the pedal, watching as the bag slowly moved toward her, now grabbing and scanning it. Is that all for you? She asked the customer, Will noticing how much water was on his clothes. Where did you go swimming at? Will's curiosity asked. What? Oh yeah, I was hooping down at the Rochester courts. You know, the 3 courts they just made outside, got full glass backboards and a nice court. Got some of the best hoopers in the area showing out too. Even got a kid named Victor. No one knows where he came from, but is like 10 feet tall and no one can stop him. Hannah nodded. I've heard about those courts. Took a lot of approval and fundraising to make that happen, right? Yeah, the customer replied. Took 3 years for the project to be fully complete, but in my opinion, it was 100% worth it. You all should check it out. From Saturday to Sunday, the 3 courts are constantly being used from 12 to 9 at night. The customer now left, presumably back to the courts where he had come from. Were you or Nick ever into sports as kids? Hannah then asked Will. I don't know. What do you mean I don't know? You 2 grew up together, right? Hannah asked. Yeah, Will said, ending his words abruptly. You are so weird sometimes, but we should go check out those courts. You ever watched a basketball game? She told him. Will shook his head, Hannah replying with a smile. Let's go check it out after we get done with our shift. I'm sure Nick can drive. I arrived to the store at 4 p.m., picking up Will and Hannah, who I had both routinely drove to work the past couple of weeks. So, we need to make a detour, Hannah said as she entered the car. And what's that? I replied to her, wondering if a new shop had opened that she would want to go to. remembering the last ice cream shop to open in a town nearby and Hannah forcing me to drive there to check it out. So you know the Rochester Community Center. They made 3 basketball courts over there that have been pretty busy. We got an invite to go watch some of the games. Hannah told Nick, who replied, I can't remember the last time I watched a basketball game live, must have been in high school. The hip-hop musical could be heard from the parking lot when we arrived, sometimes being outshined by the large crowd of 100 people that surrounded the courts line, outplaying the music with any big moment going on in the game. A quick 3, game-winning shot, and a dunk would make you think a rocket ship had taken off from the court with how loud it got. We stood on the outskirts of the second court, ourselves unable to even see the first court surrounding floor with how many people were packed in there. We started watching, a quick 2-handed dunk being the most exciting play, but as the game continued, we found ourselves looking more and more to the first court's game, or at least a player. His name was Victor, or Vic for short, which everyone referenced him as when talking about him. And from what people were saying, he was the legend that they built him up to be. A cut to the rim, grabbing the ball and dunking on the help defender. A lob thrown too high, but Victor still reaching up and slamming the ball through the hoop in traffic. The paint being covered, Victor catches the ball from near half court, defender coming, the shot goes up, and it goes in. It reminded me of NBA players. Well, not reminded. I really believe this Victor player could be an NBA player. Or a pro somewhere. I know other countries have leagues. Why was he here, in a small town from Nebraska? We continued to watch him, learning that the court worked as a winner stays, the losing team going back to the third court, while the winner from the second court moves up to the first to compete. It was interesting on how that worked, how organized it was. They also had refs, which were other players that were resting and made calls. But in reality, they didn't need refs, at least not on the first court. Almost everyone had their phone out, recording every possession, I think waiting on Victor to blow their minds. And if they had to review footage at all, you could get 5 different angles of the same play. We were there till 8, ourselves only leaving when Will had told me 3 times he was hungry, with Hannah only having to tell me once, and that pushed us to go home. We went back to the trailer, myself calling Dip ahead of time, asking if he made anything. Once inside, I could smell what he had started to make, a dish which he called goulash, which was broken down meat, pasta shells, and black olives mixed in one, well, goulash. We sat down at the table. 5 minutes later, Dip putting bowls filled with the meal in front of us. Will dramatically acting like he hadn't eaten in days, slurping the meal up, then getting up for seconds. What were you all up to today? Dip said, I think to the group, but stared at me directly. I worked and made money, Dip. You gotta be proud of me. They fired someone today, but they didn't fire me. I'm better than that guy, Will said. Jonah had been coming in high every day for the past 2 weeks. It was only when he tried scanning the hairs of a baby to ring it up when they finally had a reason to fire him, Hannah said with a chuckle. And after work? Dip said, completing his slight laugh break from Hannah's comment. There's a new park with basketball courts. We went there after and watched some of the games. There's one really good kid named Victor. Crazy athlete that dunked over and over, easily the best player there, I explained to him. Interesting, but nothing strange at all, just a couple basketball games. Everyone was human. Dip asked. Yeah, why? Is everything good? I asked him. Yeah, just when you get a moment, there's something on the bed to look at, Dip said. I nodded, then leaving down the hallway, seeing the journal on the bed. I picked it up, opening the page to the crocodilian salamander creature we had encountered a month ago. I then flipped the page, a new creature, one that was human-like but with an elongated body. Its face was also strange, a longer chin which made the entirety of his face have a slight curve, almost like a banana. I put the journal down, then walked out of the room. What was in the room? Hannah asked. We have a new case that we got assigned to. Me and Dip will take some time to investigate it. I love that you guys do that, solve crimes, help people, Hannah said. Dip replied, Thank you, myself feeling uneasy. I really like Hannah. She was my first friend I have had since we moved down here. I didn't want to keep lying to her about why we had moved down. The guilt built up in me. I then thought about my guilt for my parents, knowing that they know that I am dead, killed by a violent creature. That one really sunk my heart. We ate and talked for the next 3 hours, myself eventually giving Hannah a ride home. At the end of the ride, she gave me a goodbye kiss, then saying, "I will see you tomorrow." I nodded to her as she left, myself now placing my forehead on the steering wheel. Fuck, I muttered to myself, knowing the dangers I could be bringing her in. Worst part is without her knowledge. I drove off, telling Dip and Will good night before finding my bed. I woke up early the next morning, doing a daily routine of taking Will to the grocery store for work, waving at Hannah as she walked in as well. I then went home and picked up Dip, getting to the court at 10. People were already there on the first court, with a small crowd, but still, a crowd. Me and Dip scouted the area out, trying to figure out if anything here could be what we saw in the journal. At around 11:30, we had figured out what was from the journal, or at least what Dip believed to be from the journal. He walked in, Victor, the 8-foot stature of the man walking onto the court. "Well, go talk to him," Dip said to me. "What and say what? Are you from an alternate dimension in which someone is from and trying to hunt my brother?" I asked him. "Well, eventually, but you need to befriend him," Dip said. I looked back at Victor, nearly a swarm of people around him as he walked down the edge of the court. "I think he has enough friends," I said to him. "Yeah, but you can make him your friend. You got Hannah to say she would be, so that can't be much harder." I rolled my eyes, then walking over to him and joining the group crowded around him. "Victor," I yelled out, loud enough for him to hear it over everyone else's bickering as he turned around. He looked at me strangely, then asked, "I know you?" I shook my head. "No, but you're going to want to become a very close friend of mine." Victor laughed. "And why's that?" "Because I know where you came from," I said to him. This made an even more confused look on Victor. "I came from my mama and dad's balls, kid." Victor replied, "I think you're lying, and I need to speak with you privately." I replied back, making sure he knew I meant business. Victor laughed. "That's not going to happen, fan." "I need it to happen," I told him. Victor nodded, then moved out onto the court, the ongoing game stopping as he entered the middle circle of the court. Everyone stared at him, Victor calling ball, then being given the ball by the current players. "I need a warm-up. First player to 7. You win. You get your inclusive interview on where I came from." My stomach sunk, knowing this might be the only chance to get him off the court with me. We checked up the ball, Victor immediately posting me up from the three-point line, now stepping back, hitting a fadeaway 3 which didn't even touch the net as it went in. The next possession Victor drove, myself jumping. Why am I jumping? And he dunked it, hard. I rolled back over myself as he hung from the rim, hearing, "You gotta try harder to get close to me," from Victor. The third point wasn't much better, with him stopping at the free throw line, then throwing it off the backboard, bringing the ball down to my head level, then slamming it into the hoop, the sound reminding me of a firework exploding. "You're not human," I say to him, rechecking the ball. "I know, that's why I attract a crowd," he said as I got the ball back, seeing the entire court outlined by people now, watching us. I stood, in fear, embarrassment, in my stupidity of doing this as the crowd cheered, Victor spinning like a ballerina in the air before another two-handed dunk. "Screw this," I said to him as he went back to check up the ball. "I'm done. You win, but I'm going to tell Gallon about this," I said, walking off the court. Victor froze for a second, then replying, "Who the fuck is Gallon?" Chuckling, which was contagious as everyone started to laugh with him. I went back to Dip. His comment, "I assume the first time you met Hannah was better than that shit show." "Yeah, it was a lot better. Also, I don't think he's our guy." I replied back to him. We spent the next hours searching the other patrons on the court. none being outstanding people that could be from another dimension, at least in my eyes. We then sat on a park bench, myself and Dip tired, even having to call Hannah and ask her to drive Will home while we investigate. "You still want that exclusive?" a voice said from behind. I looked up, seeing Victor walking toward us, his long frame blocking at least 3 of the 6 people behind him. "Yeah, if that's possible," I said to him. "Yeah, it is," Victor said back, now looking back to the crowd behind us. "Give me 20 minutes. They want a one-on-one with this guy." Then pointing his 2 thumbs at himself. "Egomaniac," I heard Dip mutter. We walked 20 feet away from the crowd, the few stragglers that followed pushed back by Dip till us 3 were alone. "Does Gallon know?" He went as soon as everyone left. "No, not yet, but I need to know information," I told him in a serious voice. "You can't tell him I left. He wanted me to fight and I couldn't. I love it here. If I go back, he will kill me and eat me. He's told my people that we are nothing but an entree to him." Victor replied, "Well, answer us this. How do you know Gallon?" Victor now looked confused. "Are you serious? Everyone know who Gallon is. He has put his face on everything. I grew up knowing the great and powerful Gallon." I nodded my head. Good use of words for our leader. Still hoping he wouldn't notice how much shit I was speaking out of my mouth. "And what fight did he want you in?" I asked. "It's disgusting you treat him as such, this incredible leader." "But I don't know the fight he wants us to take. He has already conquered everything in his search for power, besides the wastelands, but there's nothing out there except this prophet. But it's a myth. No one can ever outpower Gallon." "What prophet?" I asked him. "No, you are men of Gallon. I speak of anything that might take over you. Both will report and have me killed," Victor said. "We are not with his dictatorship, Victor, but we want to know all about it so we can stop it." Dip said to him. "What? You lied to me?" Victor said, looking down on Dip. "We might know of this prophet you speak of, however. Powers of the link between your world and this one," Dip said. "The next beginning, yes, how?" Victor asked. "I just do, but we need to know, what does Gallon want?" Dip asked. "Power, that's the only thing that drives him. He has slowly lost his, and now he is spent backtracking, trying to get what is his, and it's made Loka a hell to be a part of. My older generation spoke of a peaceful land, one that is now gone under Gallon's rule." Victor went. Me and Dip both took a second, realizing that his world, the smoke world, Loka, has been taking over much like the Soviet Union taking over Russia. "Where do you stay at?" I asked him. "A small room. I think it's called an apartment." Victor replied, adding, "I get a bunch of money from these fans to pay for it. They also have me talking to someone, a scout or something, for the scares." "Okay, you have anything else about Gallon that could be useful to us?" "Not much, except that he has been focusing on making portals around this area. I'm not sure why. I just saw an easy way to escape to this world." Victor replied. "How did you know you would just blend in?" Dip asked. Victor looked around, then extended his 5-fingered hand, then the black skin tone changing into a deep purple, and the 5 fingers merging into 3. The rest of his body remained the same, and once he saw, we understood he could change shape, he reshaped his hand to a humankind. "Can I go back now? I don't want to draw more attention than I already have," Victor asked. "Sure," Dip said, Victor standing up and running to the courts. "Soon he might be a professional basketball player. Crazy to think that he thinks he will get more attention from us than that," Dip remarked. I laughed. He's just trying to fit in. They could both feel the heat wave as the reactor inside exploded, the smoke cloud hovering looming above their heads as they jumped on their metallic scooter, zooming down the road with countless lifeless and injured soldiers crowding the path as the scooter let out its electric buzz as it zooshed by. "Oh, I bet they felt that one," Perry told Alos excitedly, looking back at the explosion, a smile almost brighter than the orange-red fire itself that was now emerging. We just need to get back to our ship in Grotiva. Relay that this planet is now free from Vulcan rule. Alos reminded Perry, knowing mass destruction was something he loved the most, no matter if it was for a good or bad cause. Yeah, sure, I just loved how they let us go free with this one. Like how many Vulks did we kill? 1,000, 10,000. Doesn't matter, this shit's too much fun to care about the details. Alos just shook his head, their hovering bike zooming across the plains. They reached their ship soon after, taking it and flying to Grotiva. Among their arrival, they were celebrated, the Grotivian people being free of Vulcan rule, which had lasted for nearly 100 years. The ceremony started soon after, with Alos and Perry being shuttled to a banquet hall. They walked down a red carpet, eventually entering a Colosseum feeling room, where they were surrounded by thousands upon thousands of Grotivians cheering them. At the end of the carpet was Lady Havia, leader of the Grotivian nation, and the one who had recruited them to fight for them to begin with. She smiled to both of them as they stood in front of her, placing peace medals, which were metal and triangular emulets, upon their chests. Alos thought back of hearing how much Perry despised these type of medals, knowing this would be a part of the process if they succeeded in their mission. Alos thought deeper, though, looking around at the now cheering civilization. A group of people who felt they were in debt to them, one grateful and willing to do anything for repayment. Alos then looked at Lady Havia, who asked Alos, "Do you have anything to say to the group?" She then motioned to the heightened podium, a small device which looked to be a square microphone set in the middle. Alos approached, stepping up and now feeling the cheers of the crowd become louder and louder. He knew that this support would be needed in the future, one where he had dreamt it wouldn't become true. And with that, Alos begun his speech. Allies. "How many miles are we at?" I asked the person next to me between my own panting breaths. "We just crossed 5 miles. The person said without looking at me, appearing as if this was easy for him. How? We just ran 5 miles. "Okay, halfway there," I said to myself, giving myself encouragement in this trying time. "Actually, more like 40%. We still have 8 miles left." A racer said behind me. I looked behind, seeing the skinny twat with wire-framed glasses. "Shut up." I didn't say that, but I wanted to say that so bad, enough to bite my tongue. I kept running, asking myself how much hell would be ahead of me, then noticing that little skinny twat from behind is now passing me. Are you kidding me? I kept watching him, wondering how it was possible. I was going the same speed as him, but he kept getting farther and farther away. But that thought quickly left, and my body came to a stop. So did everyone else beside me. In fact, the total group of 10 stopped, and as more and more runners from behind caught up, they also stopped. Then I could hear stomping from behind me, a runner still runner, oblivious to what was in front of us. The runner now pulled in front of the pack, leading 5 feet before someone grabbed him, pulling him back. "Hey!" the runner yelled, fully looking back at us. "Why is everyone stopped?" he said. No one said a word, myself now looking down the path, the object now out of sight. His words must have scared it off. No, it was too big to be scared of a human. But what was it? What was that? Someone finally asked the group after an internal conversation. "Do we go back?" someone asked. "I want an update on Dip Lawrence and Nick Gibbs. Kokron, what has your team found out?" A man in a dark suit asked at the end of the table. Kokron, who was a scientist still dressed in a dirty lab coat, sat in the middle of the elongated table. Across and beside of her were 8 other personnel included for this meeting. "We are still on the search for Nick Gibbs. We believe he is located in the Midwest but are not able to pinpoint an exact location. As far as Dip, we have his body. He is fully deceased in every way." possible. The man just laughed. And we don't have the adequate technology to cure cancer. Find both of them. Yes, sir, Cochrane said shortly, knowing he shouldn't try to fight him on his words. The man now moved his attention to another, his name being Clonson. I need to know of any records of their credit cards or IDs being used. If anything attached to them has been used, I want to know. Yes, sir, Clausen said worriedly. But my team haven't discovered anything on their footprint. It's like they have vanished completely. The man frowned, remarking, Find something. Then moving to the next person. Quentin, those aliens popping around the country, what the hell are those? Well, we have given them the name Yodelines, based off the first discovery by Odin Yodelin. But these little guys have popped up all over the country. Their chemistry is much like ours, suggesting they have come from a planet much like our own. Good. And you are positive they couldn't have come from this planet? The man asked. Positive. For all the similarities, the DNA is on a different tree branch in evolution talk. These have different but similar starting ancestors. If they aren't from space, I don't know where else they could come from. Quentin replied to the man. Good work for you and the team. The man said then, Quentin interrupting. We also had an exciting discovery crossed to us this past week. A lake in Iowa, Lake Okie. A crew found what seems to be a giant salamander. More testing is required, but initial reports show the DNA sequence is a close relative to these Yodelins, maybe even a distant cousin in the evolution chart. The man nodded, now moving around the table, the patrons in the room swiveling in their chairs to keep eye contact with him. Iowa, Midwest. I suggest those searching for these outlaws start your search there, then fan out. They have evaded us for this long. They must be good, but eventually they will slip. Meeting over, I'll continue to expect weekly email updates from all until our next meeting. Mummers came from behind the man, some saying, see you next month, some annoyed they still had to work for him. The man waited till everyone left the room, now opening the cabinet and grabbing a bottle of whiskey after a small crystal-like glass that he turned in his hand, appreciating the light shimmer off. He made his way back to the table, setting the glass down and securing it to the table by the weight of the liquid he began to pour in, then sitting down and enjoying his drink. The farmer pulled down the 5th-acre plot, kicking up a gravel dust path behind from which he could barely see from the ATV. He wanted to check on the water picket, hoping that this would be where the leak had come from so that he could close it and be done with his 12-hour workday. He then sniffled, noticing a disgusting smell, getting worse and worse as he drove forward. He then came upon the smell, the dead body of a skunk in the middle of the road. Did someone hit you, smelly bastard? The farmer said as he maneuvered the ATV around, looking at the corpse which he had assumed died upon impact when a truck hit it, probably one of the farmers. But his assumption quickly fell apart as he saw a long line cut into the near leather skin of the animal. Odd, he thought, taking a moment to stare at it again, now wondering if a hunter could have done this type of damage. But why hunt a skunk? No benefit. The meat's too chewy to enjoy, upon death the reap of a smell for days. The farmer continued down the road, but stopped as he even had more questions from what was pressed into the gravel and dirt. Footsteps, ones that dug at least 1 to 2 inches into the ground, one with 3 toes spread out. A dinosaur footprint. They went extinct, the farmer said to himself, a sense of fear coming over him as he looked around. He then took out his phone, taking a quick photo of the footprint and then leaving the area, the running water picket being the least of his worries for the coming moment. The morning came early for the farmer, going to the local paper with his photo and claimed that dinosaurs had come back to the present and were on his land. He set his coffee on his smaller table in his apartment. A farmer out here thinking he knows what he's talking about. He groaned, knowing that the photo itself would be enough to warrant an investigation. An hour later, he was on the road driving toward his destination. It took the investigator 5 hours before he finally reached Jonah Smith's house, which is the farmer's name who has been explainable hard to reach for the morning. Upon arrival was 2 local police cars and 4 other cars. Other investigators. Was this investigator's first thought, knowing that crazies all the way from the Rockies to the coast would be sniffing at anything dinosaur-related? He got out of his older car, one he could barely afford, and made his way to the house. There he found Jonah S. at the dining room, an investigator by the name of Sam already bringing him through the ropes. Sam now looked over. "We are finished here, Nick. You want me to give you the details or do you want to take care of it?" he said. "I'll talk to him," Nick said now, sitting down. They spoke for the next hour, Jonah giving Nick the same details and information that he had 7 hours ago. Nick was on the road again, going to where the so-called dinosaur footprint stilled itself in the dirt trail. It was large enough to be seen clearly 20 feet away, and with the cones and rope that acted as a barrier around it, Nick guaranteed you could see it from a helicopter view. He spent the next few hours patrolling the fields, eventually ending his day eating dinner at a gas station, getting the same meal over and over again, a chicken patty that was last hot 40 minutes ago. He stood upright in his car now, listening to the police radio communications as his eyes laid to rest. She tapped her fingers across the soft wood of the deck's railing, looking down and seeing the shadow of her dog illuminated by the fluorescent lights rigged upon the deck's support legs her husband had installed a few weeks ago. She was waiting for her dog to finish its business outside, hoping that it would hurry up so she wouldn't miss another one of Pat Sajak Wheel of Fortune puzzles. "Let's go, Bitsy," she now called out, her impatient tone ringing in the dog's head as it lifted up, her white snout now pointed and focused on its owner. "Yes, you, let's move it." She called out again, now saying, "Forget it and do your business." As her dog rotated, its body behind, looking at a brush and past that the surrounding woods. Bitsy didn't follow her owner's orders, walking toward the bush. "Forget it. Yelp when you want inside," the owner now said, flipping her body around and walking toward the sliding glass door. She now pulled the handle, the door frame sliding with a heave, and she took a step inside, her dog's yelping causing her to stop. She became worried as it continued, now turning around and staring out into the yard. The view was illuminated by the lights. She could see a human-like figure, rising her dog above its head. The creature now walked forward, its body being shown in the light. The owner gasped, the color of her white dog clashing against the beige color of its captor, but the fur on the dog matching the same texture. She couldn't believe it. A creature had kidnapped her dog. She started to pant, now moving herself into the house. The yelps and pleas of freedom from her dog could still be heard outside, but fainter and fainter as it moved farther and farther away. "Do you know what the Patterson-Gimlin film is?" She asked the investigator Nick, who had been at her house for over an hour, but just now was given the chance to talk to the woman by the police. "Yes, Ms. Patterson. The shot was filmed in California in 1967. Supposed to show a Bigfoot walking across a creek and looking back at the camera before disappearing in the woods." Nick went. "Yes, but do you have it in your memory?" She persisted. "Yes, as any paranormal child goes, I have a good picture engraved in my mind that can replay that clip at will." "What about it?" Nick asked. "The similarities between that footage and what I saw last night. Whether it was a Bigfoot or human in a costume, I can't tell, but both looked so close to each other." She replied, "Okay, and this Bigfoot took your dog. Picked it up without injuring it?" Nick asked, starting to lean into the idea it was just a person in costume. "Yes, and you need to find my dog. The police said they would, but you also need to help," the women said. "I'll do my best and update you when I have something." "What's the woods behind your house?" Nick said, now standing up and walking toward the end of the house, staring out the window to the bush and forest behind. Those are the Randall Woods. It's one of the larger forests a couple miles straight, and you'll hit its big campsite," she answered. The investigator nodded, knowing that is where he would begin his search. He left and started to head for the woods. He then swiped the sweat off his forehead, now looking at the sleeve and seeking a squished bug that he had crushed in the progress. He had walked around 6 miles in these woods, seldom wildlife around him with only the casual bump-in of an officer searching. Well, for the victim's dog. He now stood still, however, looking around and seeing nothing but the green and growing foliage that carpeted the forest floor. "Hello," he called out. No response was given. He kept walking, now taking out his notebook, jotting down "being followed." The investigator now opened his notebook, the pages lit up from the car's lights. On the page were the coordinates for where he had set Chicken out to lure animals. He read the coordinates out loud to himself. 46.28 minus 92.44, 46.30 minus 92.41, 46.56 minus 92.11, 47.08 minus 91.99, 47.78 minus 92.89. He now started the car, driving to the first coordinate. At the first sight, we looked at the chicken, untouched, besides a group of ants which covered the exposed chicken leg. He looked around the surrounding area, a heave of tall grass blocking his view in for more than 5 feet. He kept driving, hitting the next stop with only the grass being swapped out for moss-infested trees. He then made his way to the third and fourth spot, with a small bird clipping away and stealing small pieces of the meat. Upon closer examination, the investigator concluded it was a blue jay and let it eat the remaining beet. The fifth spot was different, however. With the car's windows rolled down, he could hear the sounds of an animal eating. He kept driving slowly down the road, knowing that after a left turn, he would be able to see where he had laid the bait in an open field view. Within a minute, he made the turn, seeing a skulk of foxes rip away at the chicken. The investigator shook his head, then laid on the horn, the foxes fleeing away right after. Nick now got out, looking at the ripped meat and bones left by the animals. He could feel the foxes looking at him, but Nick felt something else as well, something more intense staring at him. "Hello," he called out again, the fleeing feet of the foxes being the only response. "Stupid," he now said, walking back to his car and driving away. Nick began to drift off, falling into his leather seats and quickly succumbing to his body wish of rest. Hours passed before light shone against the investigator's car. Bright lights, as if he was being born again, pointed directly at him, blinding the investigator to see where it was coming from. From the angle, he could tell that it was from an object down the road. The lights now getting brighter and closer. He started to panic, grabbing the keys he had placed in the cup holder and twisting it into the ignition lock. The car engine spit but didn't start. Nick tried again, more and more of the car being engulfed by the light. He then slammed on the steering wheel, his realization his car has been tampered with. But by who? He shook his head, waiting for the arrival of something else, but then saw something. In the rearview mirror, his eyes met with a dark green bulb. 2 bulbs emerging out of the head of a fur-coated human. Bigfoot, he said to himself, the lights now being a distant afterthought and Bigfoot being his main priority. Nick maintained vigilant eye contact with the creature, his attention being pulled from the large camouflaged metallic body of a SUV being set in front of the car, eliminating the chance of escape from the front. The Bigfoot creature behind him now pulled around to the side door. The creature pulled on the door, it being locked and slamming its ape fist against it. Nick moved to the other side of the car, the instant horror of hearing a click and seeing the unlock switch pop up. The creature tried the door again, this time being successful. It then went for the investigator's leg, grabbing it and holding as if it was a vice grip, now pulling him out of the car. the creature thrown both its long, muscular arms Nick, then a slap on the back of the head, causing him to become unconscious. "Where's Dip?" a man asked. "Who?" Nick went groggily, finally waking to his injuries. "Dip Lawrence, or if it a new name now?" the man continued questioning. "I don't know who you're talking about." Nick's eyes now opened, himself handcuffed to a metal pole support in a basement. "Where the hell am I?" he said, pulling the cuffs against the metal, now scraping them up and down. "Calm down. I promise. Not even the strongest man alive could get out of those cuffs. You are our prisoner to answer our questions." The voice continued. "I don't know who you are, what this is about, anything. Let me go. People will be looking for me." Nick went. "What friends? Everyone in Oregon believes you are dead, and if you don't cooperate, that may soon be the case." A reply came. "Oregon, you're going to kill me? For what? I didn't do anything." "Out searching for a creature that you created, the same type that destroyed Livingston." The voice went. "No, I've never been to Oregon. I don't know who Dip Lonrice is. My name is Nick Stevens. I'm a private investigator that deals with paranormal activities. I came to research for an article in a newspaper." "And your old name is Nick Gibbs," the voice said. No. Check my ID. I've had it for years that the ink has molded itself into the paper. It will say my name is Nick Stevens. I live on 104th Street, Apartment 5. My date of birth is May 25th, 1989. The voice now presented its body, a muscular man in gray battle combat clothing. He looked through the belongings of the investigator, taking a long look at the ID. "Do we have the wrong person? You idiot son of a bitch!" The voice went, pounding a table, then swiping his fist, a bottle of whiskey flying off the table, shattering against the brick wall. "Dip and Nick," Nick Stevens said. "What was that?" the irritated interrogator asked. "Dip and Nick. They were a new group I met when I was out searching for aliens. First time I saw those two, seemed like a father and son duo." The interrogator now sat in front of Nick, the dim light not letting Nick see any physical attributes beside his massive frame. "Tell me everything." "I first met them at Fontenelle Forest. They seemed pretty new, no expensive investigative equipment. But nothing too drastic about them. I didn't speak to them much." Nick went. "Gotta give me more than that. Where were they from?" The man asked. "I'm not sure what part, but it's the city in Nebraska." Omaha, I believe," Nick replied. An hour later, Nick was unchained, then drug out into a car and driven to the country. There he was dropped, giving a verbal warning to never talk about the encounter again, and then another bag was tossed on him. Inside the bag was $10,000, enough that they hoped would keep his mouth shut. Nick now stood up, the car that had taken him already running away in the horizon. The sun was now starting to come up, enough for him to realize his nightmare might be over. "Well, Jason, did you hear?" "Hear what?" "The events from this past weekend." "You talking about the car show?" "No, Lake Flannanockle." "No, what happened, Tim?" "Well, breaking news from Lake Flannanockle. The pests are out there. A group of tiny campers from the Eagles group were out camping that way. Someone must have left their caught fish on the bank, and apparently hundreds and hundreds of bats were around them, sucking the blood off the aquatic fish. Now, in Nebraska, there is one type of bat, the vampire bat, that is known to suck blood from animals, and those are the bats from the Henry Dorley Zoo. So I'm hearing the zoo is having escape bats roam the city of Omaha. That's what I'm thinking. These bats do remain a mystery. Apparently a bunch of scared screaming kids is enough to run these animals off. But our experts at Bird Exterminators, your place for pests removal, are confident that these bats must be escaped vampire bats. And with us today is Mr. Robert himself. Yes, Tim and Jason. It looks like we have quite an issue on our hands with these pests. But don't worry. I am here to help and serve the people of this city. Just give us a call at 402-898-1021 or look on our website, Bird Exterminators, to help us get the pest out of your lives. You know, they have an ad on Boomer's radio every hour. Soon they'll have the owner of the dog kennel place off State Street. The Mike and Barry's ice cream on, I told Dip. Yeah, but the story they told is legit. At least the campers finding the bats eating the fish. Actually a bigger thing than they made it seem. The zoo's under pressure since it's the third animal this year to escape from there. Like vampire bats, native to South America, couple thousand miles away. But here's the thing. Unlike the other two, the zoo is saying these bats didn't come from their zoo. Dip replied to me. That would mean that these didn't come from any regular place, I said back. I think you know where I'm heading toward this. You remember a while ago we looked up the Ohika tribe from Oregon. They had a bunch of spirit animals, and now with this local Omaha tribe, they have animals as well. Well, one of these animals is a bat. Actually, bats are common spirit animals for all native tribes. They represent rebirth and guardianship. And of course, nighttime. Dip replied. You really studied a lot on this. I said back to him. There's a parallel universe, and you, brother, has powers. I am doing everything in my power to know everything about it. Dip replied. Well, what's the move then? I asked Dip. Lake Flannanicall is about 10 to 15 minutes away with a semi-large wooded area. I say we hike through those trails there and see if any bats pop up. Dip replied to me. It's nearly 2 p.m. No bats would be out. I said back to him. Attention to detail. Nick, those campers found the fish covered in bats at 5 p.m. on a day that was 90 degrees. They aren't regular bats. Dip replied to me, leaving toward the lake. We arrived in 12 minutes, Dip groaning in the traffic on the way there, but overall being happy with the progress. We started walking through the trails, another hot day keeping the park empty from anyone that would see us out wandering around. The forest was pretty bare, with few rabbits and squirrels around the area. We then saw a fox across the trail, running from the brush and out to something, the brown coat and body once belonging to a deer laying on the ground. The fox turned around, wondering if we would leave it alone before it could nip at the dead corpse that was absent of any smell, leading to be a fresh kill. Dip stepped forward, an instant reaction from the fox to scatter away. Dip then reached the body of the doe, myself following and seeing the 2 precision cuts straight across its body, blood soaked in the surrounding area. A bat's not doing this. It looks like someone cut this with a knife, then took something out, Dip replied. But if it was human, why 2 distinct slashes? Why not one large one? I asked him. Dip shook his head. Another mystery, he said, now circling the body. We spent another couple of hours exploring, leaving the deer body where it was at, the foxes feasting on it as soon as we left. I then left to pick up Will and Hannah, who, contrast from me, had an uneventful day working at the grocery store. Hannah stayed late that night, our group around the table playing cards while Dip was 5 feet away stirring some pasta in a pot. I had just played my ace down on the table, then Nick playing a 10. I take it all, I said, swiping my hand over the table and pushing the played cards toward me. Dinner should be ready soon, Dip mentioned, getting in a quick comment as Hannah pushed out 5 new cards for the start of the next round. So, Dip, what were you and Nick up to today? Hannah asked. Dip looked back, maybe a bit surprised that Hannah asked him that instead of me, unaware that an hour ago I gave a bland answer. Nothing being my original response to the question. Not much I can think of. Small-town case of someone stealing mail out of a mailbox. Might be a tiny thing, but is a felony crime, Dip replied. Hannah nodded, then being interrupted by tiny squeaks outside. What is that? She asked, as the squeaks multiplied one after another. The room inside fell quiet, ourselves hearing the sounds outside. Faint pops that mixed between a dog squeal and a popcorn kernel popping within the bag, one after another with the flaps of a bird's wings. Those sounds like bats, right? We had a lot of those back home, Will said. Yeah, I bet Oregon would have many bats, Hannah said to Will. Yeah, Will said awkwardly, myself now sweating at what this could mean. I then felt my tongue go down my throat, a booming sound coming from above as something plopped down on the metal roof of the trailer. It swayed back and forth, myself totally focused, barely noticing Hannah asking, "What the fuck was that?" Dip went over to his bed, pulling out the drawer underneath and gripping a pistol in his hand. I went to the back room, grabbing my own. Hannah and Will both ducked down under the kitchen table, every single eyeball staring right above my head on the roof. A pound then came, as if a bowling ball fell from a small height onto the metal. Then another, and another. Something is walking up there. What is it, Dip? Will yelled out while under the table. I don't know, just stay calm, was Dip's response. How the hell are they supposed to stay calm, Dip? I'm not even calm, I asked myself. 5 more bowling balls struck the roof as the creature seemed to have crossed the trailer, now seemingly sitting above Dip's head. Dip was looking up at the ceiling, then shook as the front suspension was risen, a giant weight coming off the front tires. It shook for another moment before it again went quiet. No bowling balls, no squealing dogs and popping popcorn. Dip now opened the door, myself following and watching as he slowly walked outside. I went in front of the trailer, scouting the air for any flying pests, then crawling up a ladder to get on the roof that was set in the front. Up there I could see the imprints the thing, creature, giant something had left. The prints were pretty small, my crunched-up fist being about the size of the impressions, but still, you could see the damage the thing had done. Dip now got a good stare at the prints as well, mentioning, "That thing was heavy to do this. I've seen these roofs have tree limbs fall on them before and do less damage." I nodded my head. "Means we have to find what did this," I replied. We went back inside, Hannah giving me a hug as she trembled, her whole body shaking. "What are all these things?" she asked me. "I can't explain it," I replied to her. "I'm scared." She said back, myself putting my head into her shoulder, disappointed I couldn't tell her the truth. We slept on the twin mattress together, with Will sleeping out on the kitchen bench and Dip sleeping in his own bed. We awoke early the next morning, Hannah and Will going to the supermarket early for their shift. "To the woods, find out what paid us a visit last night," Dip told me as they left. The morning woods was damp and humid, making the entire walk through miserable as it felt like a walk through a dense jungle. I also could feel my muscle in my legs start to tear away as the endless walking through the woods was tiresome. Minutes started to feel like hours as we scourged the forested carpet. Even with my pain, I kept up with Dip, his clothes drenched and wrinkled from the sweat that had accumulated upon them. "What's that sound?" Dip then asked me, stopping in the middle of the familiar woods, not a clear sign of what he could be referring to. "Dip, I didn't hear anything." "Are you feeling okay?" I asked him, knowing his imagination could be getting the better of him. The same way I looked at a bug earlier believing it to be a fresh fruit slice. "The chitter? It's the sounds of bats." He went, sure of what he had heard. I focused in on my ears, blurring out the headache I had and heard my surrounding. He was right, there's light chirps much like we had heard last night. I followed Dip, who had a much better idea of the sound and where it came from, brushing himself against a bush as he crept to the sound. There I could see where it came from. A giant fuzzy ball with 2 poles clinched against a tree branch from where it hung with hundreds of individual chirping sounds coming from it. "What is that?" I asked Dip, watching as he pulled out his gun. He shot 3 rounds at the object fast, it now dropping and creating an indent on the ground below. We then walked over to it, the object moving slightly up and down, Dip firing again into it, then no more movement. I could still hear the chirping from the object, faster and more concerned, scared. Dip flipped the object over, the head of the giant bat looking into me, almost asking why my partner had killed it. On its stomach were nearly 100 small bats clinched to their mother. Dip then raised his foot, stomping on the tiny bats, defenseless to his attack. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed to him. "These grow into that." Dip replied, pointing to a baby, then right after to its mother. "Unless you want to deal with a whole bunch of pissed-off giant bats in 5 months, I expect you start stomping these guys out like a fire." He finished, stomping another 2 groups. I stood back for a second, looking at the deflated bodies of previously squashed baby bats. I knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't let these things grow to be its parent. It's not natural to this world. I started to join in, squashing until all squeaks were silenced. "I just got off the phone with Nick. He says him and Dip are still looking for that thing from yesterday. They might be home late," Hannah said to Will as they ate lunch together. "That works for me. We can watch Rocket Man," Will replied to her. "I don't get how you like that show. All they do is fight, complain, and fight again." Hannah jabbed at him. "No, there's more to it. Sometimes Gracie has sex scenes and they show, well, it." Will replied. Hannah's only response was rolling her eyes, waiting for their lunch to be over. They arrived at the trailer later that night, Hannah cooking a small meal for herself and Will, while Will worked on the chores Dip had given him in case they wouldn't be back. Will was cleaning the room where himself and Nick slept as he heard Hannah call out, "Can you take out the trash? I need to drain and throw these scraps away, but it's full." Will came out of the room, walking over to the trash can and picking it up, now walking outside, reminding himself that he had to do it anyway for Dip. He walked down the street to the dumpster. When about 20 feet away from the house, he got pushed to the ground. He now laid on the ground, twisting to see the attacker behind him. His eyes lit up when he saw the ginormous bird spread its wing above his body. Will now let out a cry and rose his legs, striking it forward and hitting the bird in its small rodent-like body. The creature backed up, Will making some space as the creature walked toward him. Then the creature stopped, turning its head 180 degrees and seeing Hannah, who stood in front of the trailer with a second can of pasta sauce to throw at the creature. The creature shriveled its head up and shrieked, a chill going through Hannah's body upon glancing at such a sight. She stood frozen as the creature flapped its wing, then diving at Hannah, who was defenseless. Then a giant light shot through the air, striking the creature mid-air and blasting it away, landing hard on the ground against the neighbor's trailer. Hannah looked straight, seeing Will's hand extended, the light orb resorbing itself into his hand as if it was going to reload. "What the fuck?" Hannah said out loud. "Get inside," Will said, rushing toward the trailer, Hannah closing the door behind them as Will collapsed on Will's bed. Hannah gasping, seeing the giant slash on Will's back. Pick up," she then said as she paced back and forth, saying, "Nick, the bat thing, it's here," as he answered the phone. The trailer then moved off its foundation, the giant metal frame creaking as something had hit it, something big. A second later, the metal was struck again, this time from the roof, creating a sound as if Hannah and Will were stuck in a drum. "We are coming," I said on the other line, giving Dip the command, "We have to go now. The bat is back home." We ran through the woods, getting on the trail and sprinting the mile back to our car. Dip spun out of the parking lot fast, enough to get some stares from others using the park. We started to speed down the road, then a figure pulling out in front of us. It gave me a flashback, the human-like figure standing unafraid of the speeding car coming towards itself. "Alos?" I said, Dip replying, "Shit," as the car started to slow down. I now got a better look at the figure, a tall, lanky person dressed in a red suit with red skin standing 50 feet in front of us. Dip got out of the car, immediately pleading as if his life depended on it. "Please let us get by. We have people in danger." The figure rose its hand, a fire now emerging and shooting a small, fiery snowball at Dip, sending him back upon the road. "It's time to surrender to me, Agon. Or should I call you Will?" I froze in place, watching as the figure approached, its skull lighting up, illuminating more and more of its body until it gave the effect that it stood under a streetlight. I looked at the figure. Its details. It didn't have skin was my first thought. In fact, it didn't look like it had any organic features. Each part of this humanoid that made it human, its eyes, nose shape, the curve of its lips were gone, replaced by what terrified me. Bone. Straight bone, its eyes sockets sunken in, its mouth only a little line with teeth. The nose punctured into itself. The worst thing was that the bones weren't white, but burned, blacked, and charred. A gunshot took me out of the trance. Myself seeing Dip fire into the figure, its reaction was null to the attack. It raised its hand again, then shooting a fireball at Dip, knocking him upon the ground again. Get up and move out of the car or your legs will be burned and I will carry you away. The figure said as it stood outside the car. I obeyed, opening the door and exiting, the cold hand of the figure grasping on my neck as if it was a monkey bar it was hanging off of. Please, I mumbled, the figure ignoring as a portal that reminded me of the one Will had made opened in front. The figure pushed me forward, myself having no choice to oblige and walk through, only to be followed by my worst nightmare. The bat creature now broke the window of the trailer, poking its head through as it shrieked at Hannah and Will, who grouped together in the corner holding each other. Leave us alone, Will yelled at it, seeing the blood cover the bat's short gray and black fur from the glass cuts. We have to leave this thing. It's going to break through and we are sitting duck here, Hannah said. Agreed, Will replied, raising his hands and shooting an orb of energy into the bat, knocking it back. Go, go, Hannah said as she rushed out the door, looking at the bat as it laid on its back in a daze. Will looked over at it too, thinking about trying to get the final blow as Hannah honked the horn, yelling and pleading with Will to enter the car. He compelled to her request, getting in as they drove out the trailer park. What now? Will asked Hannah. They said they were at park. Let's go find them. She said. They made their way on the highway, now seeing Dip's car off to the side. They pulled off to the other lane, parking beside the car and getting out. He took Nick. Dip told them as they came to him. Who? Will asked, a panic setting over him. Dip tried to speak but was too tired, now sitting on the hood of the car. Who? Will shouted, pounding his fist on the car and waking Dip up. I'm sorry, Dip said then, being interrupted by a screech. In the light of the moon, they could see the animal, its wingspan nearly 12 feet long, making it appear as a small plane fly through the sky. The bat circled the group of three, Dip barely having the strength to rotate his head to keep an eye on it. Then the bat attacked, diving in as if it was a hawk and they were field mice. Hannah screamed. Dip tried reaching for his gun, and Will put out his hand. Another bright streak overtook the light the moon could produce, a spear-like object emerging and shooting toward the bat, cutting in through the top of its head and slicing the animal in two. The parts came to the left and right of the car, the wings flapping erratically, like the last moves a chicken makes after its head's cut off. Then it stopped. The bat was dead, and Will screamed out, in anger, in frustration, in rage. The scream filled the air, only stopping when Will looked over, seeing a girl now frightened and terrified of him, as if she was 10 years old. Will stood back. I'm sorry, Hannah, he said to her. Hannah couldn't say a word, her breaths deep and thoughtful as she tried to calm herself down. Will now heard from the car. He looked over, Dip staring back at him. I know where they went, Dip said to him. Where? Will said. We need a portal. Dip let out, his eyes now rolling back into his head as he collapsed on the ground, passing out. Dip, stay with us. Open your eyes. Come on, come on. Shit, 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 shit. Hannah went as she sat over him, her golden cross necklace starting to gently touch Dip's chin as she searched for a way to resurrect him. Will sat back a few feet, fearful of getting too close to Dip and thinking Hannah would be too scared of him. He looked over at the two, wondering first what had done this to Dip, and second, what had taken his brother. Why take Nick? What does he want from him? He said to himself, "Will, get over here," Hannah called out to him. Will stepped slowly over to her. "What?" he asked. "He's starting to wake up and recover. I need you to tilt his head up like how you would hold a baby, you know what I mean? While I do that, I am going back to the car and finding a water bottle or something to hydrate him." "I've never held a baby before," Will replied, Hannah looking at him realizing it was not the craziest thing he had said that day, or done, in that matter. "That's fine. Come over here and hold him like this." She went, now lifting Dip's head up 2 inches, enough for the hair on the back of his head to be floating in the air. Will walked over, now cupping his hands under Dip's head and maintaining the position. "Good," Hannah said to him, now strutting over to the car. Will looked at Dip, a small streak of blood cross over his eyes, the wound being a couple of inches above on his forehead. He could see Dip's lips move, at least in a rhythmic tone that signaled he was doing soft, labored breathing. He now focused on the area around him, the highway they laid it still absent of any traffic, leading to no issues with Dip's car still being in the middle of the road. Hannah was smart when she arrived, moving off to the shoulder, her car split between that and the road itself. Hannah now walked back to Dip, kneeling down and placing the lip of a Gatorade bottle on Dip's lips. She now tilted the bottle up, the light blue liquid inside sliding down and resting on his lips. Then, almost on instinct, Dip opened his mouth, allowing the liquid to enter. Good job. Keep drinking," Hannah chanted, more and more liquid pouring into Dip's mouth. Will then felt a shove, a light shove, as Dip swung his arm and rolled to his side, spitting out the Gatorade onto the road. Will looked at Hannah, who put the bottle away from him and put the cap back on. They both waited anxiously as they gave Dip space to breath and, well, not choke on the liquid Hannah forcibly made him drink. "Don't try to waterboard me," Dip let out after finishing maybe his 5th cough. He looked up, his eyes a reddish color, and Hannah holding up the bottle to him. "Drink. You need to drink." Dip listened, taking the bottle from Hannah's hand and taking a swig. 3 more swigs later and the bottle was empty. Dip throwing it off the road and into the parallel ditch of the road. "Fuck me," he then said, not at anyone, but loud enough for both to hear. Dip then looked up at Will, who had remained silent since first seeing Dip respond from his first sip. "I'm sorry, I shot at him. I tried to kill him, but I don't know. I didn't know how to stop him. I tried to get more information on your world from Alos, but he was always focused on our world," Dip said. "What other world?" Hannah asked. Dip now went silent, knowing that he had just disclosed the biggest secret he had to keep. His stomach dropped as Hannah continued to ask questions. "Who is Alos? Is Will some type of alien? Is that why he can shoot something from his hands?" "Fuck me." Dip let out, this time not in sadness but an irritated matter. Again, not at anyone other than himself who he could blame for this, for everything. "Give me a second." Dip now asked the two as he laid on the ground, Hannah and Will both standing up. "We don't have time for that. We need to get Nick," Hannah told Dip. "Yeah?" Will chimed in as Dip replied, "We need to rest, figure out a plan, get resources." "No, we need to find the people that took Nick. What if we call the police? Do we know what car they took?" Hannah continued to ask. "They didn't take a car, Hannah, and police can't help. I promise. Just take me and Will home," Dip replied. "But," Will said. "What?" Dip interrupted hastily. "Calm down. We are not the group to fight with each other, Hannah said, pushing Dip back from looking into Will's soul. Home now, Dip replied. What about the car? Hannah asked him. Leave it, no one can track it back to us. Dip replied, now walking to Hannah's car on the side of the road and hopping in. Let's just go. Dip needs to rest. Will went. But your brother, Hannah told him. We aren't able to beat what took him by just walking in without a plan. I'm sorry we lied to you. Please, all of this is above your head. Just get us home. Will told Hannah. Fuck you. She replied to him, now walking to the car and giving Dip a stare as he sat in the passenger seat. She then waited for Will to enter in the back, starting the car and heading home. The ride home was silent, enough to only hear the engine softly hum and the suspension riddle while going over any bump. Hannah's departure was even more silent, with Dip telling her, You need to leave for your own home tonight. She didn't seem to fight Dip's words, just getting in her car and driving home. Both Dip and Will agreed to take the night to rest, Dip's injuries from a small fireball striking him in the chest, leaving a rash mark on his stomach, and Will was still rattled by the scratch marks the gigantic bat had left behind. Will also didn't feel any joy of the antibacterial cream dip applied to the wounds on the back, his skin feeling as if it was being stabbed when the cream hit his skin. They awoke early the next morning, Dip and Will leaving the house and arriving to a small, rinky office where the walls were laid of old bricks dirty from dusty wind gusts. Will had never seen the store before, mostly since it was on the outside of Omaha, meaning it took 30 minutes to get there, but Dip seemed like he knew beforehand. Stay in the car. I should be back in 10 minutes. Don't come in the store if I'm late. Dip said as he rolled down the window for Nick. Dip then left the car, entering the metal apocalypse-like door as Will read the sign above Ammo for America in a red, white, and blue gradient. Dip returned with a box in his hand about 8 minutes later, the box being long in length but short in width and height. It also had no disclosing text on it, so the contents were a mystery to Will, just knowing that what was inside was protected by the wooden oak box. What's in the back? Will asked Dip as he now entered the car after closing the back seat of the car from placing the box inside. Hopefully something strong enough to fight off what took Nick, Dip replied to him. Asshole, Will replied. What? Dip looked at Will in a perplexed way. Not you, the asshole who took Nick. Will clarified as Dip nodded understanding. We will get him back, and this asshole will be killed, Dip assured Will. My eyes slowly start to raise up, enough to focus on an object about 50 feet in front of me. It swings back and forth, like a pendulum clock. Actually, no, the object is still. I am the one swinging. I look down, the tiles lines on the ground move, and I can feel my body weight shit back and forth within my cage. Why am I in a cage? I ask myself, remembering I was just taken from my home world to this place. I heard a slight chuckle from a space away from me, kind of giving me a sinking feeling inside. I'm not alone, and the room is so dark I can barely only make out large objects. Either way, I know I am in a large room, one much like a church, with large columns that support the weight of the roof like the one I was seeing in front of me. It also seems like everything is made of a dark gray polished stone. At least I think it's gray. Could be a different color, but with no windows, and the only light coming from, well, maybe a skylight. I'm not seeing a skylight, it's just dark. I couldn't tell the color of anything. Okay, think, I say out loud to myself. I can still speak. I still remember my name is Nick. I remember being with Dip. I know the thing that took me through a portal, and then I ended up here. I now examine my cage. It's nothing special. Reminds me of a bird's cage. Long metal poles about an inch apart keep me entrapped. The bottom is a mesh metal with small square cutouts, and the top of my cage closes in on itself like a dome. But on the top of the dome is a small circle, and woven inside the circle appears to be a chain that is strung up to the roof. I look down again, something I hadn't noticed before but do now. I'm hanging. Not hanging high, but about 5 feet off from the ground. At least I think it's 5 feet. It's still tough to say based on how dark the room is, but I wouldn't be scared to jump out of my cage if I could. The problem with that, well, I can't get out of my cage. And to be fair, what would I even do out of my cage? I am trapped here, in a world I've never been in and know nothing about. It's like I'm abducted by aliens. But the thing with that is, if I was taken by aliens, I could possibly steal a ship and fly back to Earth. With this planet, I know of no way of getting back, except the creature that took me and Will. Will, I sighed to myself. I wondered about how he was feeling, if he knew where I was at, if he was going to try to come to save me. What if he's dead? My mind forces me to say out loud. Maybe a way to process an outcome I didn't want to believe could happen. My breaths start to become labored. I don't like the possibility of that happening. Thankfully, I noticed something that made me stop my breaths in an instant. Light. Dip watched Will as he raised his hand, swirling it around, and now a light popping in front of them. At first, Dip was amazed, like he was practically watching magic. How could he not be amazed, even though he's seen Will do this before? Will, on the other hand, was focused, straining as the window he created to Loka, his homeworld, began to open. He grunted as the portal widened another 5 inches. Keep going, Will, you're doing great. Dip replied, the portal now masking his bed, which sat behind the opening portal. Dip then looked around at the trailer. All the windows closed, giving them both the privacy to do this in private. Nothing from the trailer reacting to the portal being created inside. Dip did believe that when Will opened the portal, it would start to suck things in, almost like a black hole. That's why he forced Will and himself to clean up, putting all loose items into mine and Will's room and locking it shut before Will began. Dip still held his breath as the portal widened again, still wondering if the trailer collapsing in on itself and being sucked into the portal could be a possibility. A slight possibility, he hoped. I'm going to push to widen this enough to walk through. Will screamed out in triumphant effort. Okay, once I can fit, I'll push through, and you're sure you can get through as well. Dip replied, trying to soothe and calm Will Dunn, hoping he wouldn't overdo it on this task alone. Promise, be right behind you. Will said, still straining and letting our A grunt before the portal opened another 4 inches, then another 7 inches in front of Dip's eyes. A couple more inches, Dip said, seeing the portal be about 75% the size of a regular door. Go! Will went as his hand fingers stretched out more, the portal now widening to nearly 90% that of a regular door, and the height extending to more than enough room for Dip, who saw his opportunity. Dip now stood there, holding his breath, knowing this was the time. Can't be afraid now, he said, stepping through the portal. He took his first step on dirt, the soil being dry and fine. He brought his other foot through the portal, noting the fact that the portal laid flat against the ground, making his trip as easy as walking through a door in a home. He looked around, the sky still having red streaks like before, now seeing blushes of purple also in the sky. Beautiful, he said to himself, the skylight reminding him of seeing the northern lights while in Oregon. He now looked back, the portal still being open but slowly closing, shrinking by an inch from when he first looked back at it. Then another inch, a couple seconds later. Come on, Will, don't leave me here. He said to himself, a growing anxiety that Will would never come through. He then saw movement, the portal glowing, then seeing Will's blue jeans push through, then the rest of his body. Dip smiled as Will fully came through, looking around the horizon as the portal he had come from closed behind him. Good to see you. Dip said to Will, who moved his focus on him. Will nodded, then started to walk, saying, "Follow," to Dip. Dip smiled, happy with the idea of a past resident leading the way, unstrapping the automatic rifle that hung on his shoulder and putting it in his hand. They didn't say it, but both Dip and Will both were thinking the same thing as they started along their path. Find the kidnapping asshole. The room illuminated around me, myself looking around, even shifting my weight back and forth within my cage and seeing more and more hanging cages, each with something within them. One was across from me in a straight line, filled with a skinny green humanoid creature with a football-sized head. I then saw a creature to the left of him, separated by a column between them. This creature appeared to be smaller than me, with a white fur coat and 2 antlers sticking out of its head. I then swung enough to see the creature to the left of me, again separated by a column. This one appeared to be the most human, having human skin, hair, facial features. That was nearly a second glimpse I got all of that. Unlikely another human was trapped here with me. I swung again, this time looking at the maybe human again. Definitely a human wrapped up in a white cloth blanket. I swung again this time saying hello, then swinging back, blocking my view. The next time I got in view, the human had turned 90 degrees facing away from me. "Stop annoying my pets, Agon," a voice said, a shadow being cast along the floor. It looked human, the head being prominent on top, followed by broad shoulders and long arms that led to hand and fingers shaped like blades. The shadow then turned to a figure. It was my kidnapper. "Who are you?" I asked, remembering he was referring to me as Will's name from this world. "You should know who I am, Agon. Second of command from Galen, ruler of your life. I am Haida." "I don't know who you are," I say to Haida as confident and fearless as I could. "Please, you try to run and hide from people like me. Don't act like that's not true. But it's okay, you're back to my belonging. All of you are like that, right?" Haida said, spreading his arms out wide as if he was celebrating looking at the dozens of creatures trapped in cages. A sound wasn't made from any of the trapped creatures as Haida moved his attention to me. "Use your powers. Let me see if Galen's word for you are true, a true successor." "I don't have powers," I say to Haida. Haida smiled, or at least his black skeleton mouth moved in that shape. His entire skeleton-burned body giving me the creeps. "You got off this planet from your own power, not the cheap knockoff those Indians you believe to be your friends can do," Haida said, now looking over to the creature left to me. "Stupid Indian, you know your friend next to you had a brother. He had a fate that you might one day share if you don't cooperate," Haida said. "You're a monster," a woman said to my left. "You will be killed by my people for what you have done. You treat death disgracefully. You kill for the fun of it." She continued. I swung a little bit, the Indian women next to me staring angrily at the Haida. "Glad to see you still have spirit. I have plans to break that." Haida replied to her, "Now quiet as I finish with Agon," focusing back on me. "Create a portal," Haida says to me. "I can't," I reply to him. 10, 9, 8. Haida starts counting down, myself not knowing what to do, wondering what would happen when he hits 0. 3, 2, 1. Haida finished, now opening his fisted hand where a small flame appeared and shot it under my cage, lighting a fire with the tips of the flames striking my plastic shoes. I yelped as the flames started to rise, reaching past my ankles and up to my knee. "He's trying to burn me," I yell, grabbing onto the sides of the cage and trying to make my way up away from the flames. I then yelped in pain, looking at my hand which swelled from the heated bars. I then started to jump, my knees curling into my shoulders as my top of the head hit the cage, myself feeling like I was in a microwave, about to explode like a popcorn kernel. "Stop!" I pleaded with Haida. 2 seconds later, the flame was brought back, The bars of my cage, which started to glow, began to dim, my feet not feeling the heat they had before. That was 20 seconds of the power I have, much like the power you possess. I'll be back in due time with Galen. Continue to defy our wishes to see your power, and this continues till you irrelevant. And I prefer to slow cook when this happens, Haida said, now turning around and walking down the hall. I felt the bottom of my shoes, my theory being proved. The bottom of my shoe had melted, and I had plastic on the metal bottom of my cage. Will scrapped his foot against the loose soil, the marks being visible for miles and miles behind them, as Dip continued to look cautiously around for anything that could be a threat. They had been walking for nearly 4 hours, noticing the sky start to dim. Will telling Dip, "It's going to be night in 2 hours." Dip noted, adding, "Let's find someplace secure to camp out, where those things couldn't reach us." Remembering the creatures that appeared to be giant land octopuses, with the tentacles at least 30 feet long across the horizon. Another hour passed before Will called out, "There," both seeing the giant flat rock face with a hole at the very bottom, perfect for 2 tired travelers to rest of the night. On the way there, Dip had his gun on the back, holding firewood in his arms as Will watched guard. They reached the tunnel, the opening a little bit under 8 feet, allowing them to enter without constraint. The tunnel extended deeply, and Dip lit one of the logs on fire, creating a makeshift torch to explore. He went first, and like a true explorer made the first big discovery as he walked 30 feet in the tunnel. This was the tunnel's size growing exponentially, enough to the size of a large meeting room. "I found a good spot," Dip called to the trailing Will, who entered. "Perfect," Will said as he entered, going to the middle of the room and setting the campfire down. They set the fire up, the light illuminating the room. They now saw the top, a cone design with a small hole at the top where the circle funneled in and out of the room. "Good design? This place was created by something intelligent," Dip said. "You think?" Will said as he went to the wall, looking at distinct lines of white pigment drawn out. Dip approached the wall, first seeing the picture of the giant octopus on the wall. "It looks like whoever drew this are warning of creatures out there." Then moving to the next drawing, this one looking like a raptor but the same length and height of the octopus. Dip continued down the wall, noting the creatures on the wall, one appearing to be a giant snake with 2 tentacles instead of hands, another appearing to be a giant hawk with 8 legs, and finally a long bipedal reptile with a long alligator snout with sharp razor teeth on the top jaw extending past the lower jaw. He then moved to another painting, this one not telling a warning about creatures instead of a story. Dip and Will stood by each other examining the photo. There they see a bunch of mountains grouped together. The next symbol is a pickaxe striking a giant rock, a giant crack in the middle of the rock that would have split it open. Inside the rock were tiny minerals or smaller rocks which were extracted out. Those rocks were now laid out, the color being different than the white everything else was painted. The colors were neon green, light blue, hazy purple, and amber red, all rocks being different shapes and sizes, one a giant clump, one being a long skinny rock, the other bending its figure to be a lazy sea. Dip continued to examine the rocks, trying to see a pattern for why the rocks were so important while Will continued. "Galen." He let out, making Dip turn his head. He then came to what Will was talking about, a square face in front of him with eyes looking down at him. Around him were the different rocks with one on his forehead. "Why does he have a rock on his head?" Dip asked Will. "I think this explains it," Will replied, moving to the next photo of a human figure opening a portal. "So he gets power from the rocks," Dip said. "Great story, painter. We are looking for a powerful geologist." He continued. "More," Will said. Now the same picture of a rock being split open appearing, but this time, no rocks. "Why would this be drawn? You can't expect every rock to have this guy's minerals." Dip said, now walking along the wall some more, seeing why. There he saw two groups fighting, bodies being laid and dead on the ground between his spears flung through the sky above them. Behind one group stood the mountains. The other group had a large figure with a mineral glowing red on his forehead. Galen. Dip's heart started to swell as the story continued. Those fighting creatures now having chains around their necks attached to the mountains, axes in hand to mine. Galen made them all slaves, slaves to mine the rocks and give him his power. So why does he want me? Will asked. I don't know, but we need to find Nick and get out of here. Dip said, laying back on the wall and it sinking in. Dip looked back, seeing now that the wall moved. In fact, the wall being a large rock that could slide. Dip pushed it to the left, showing a small hole into the actual wall of the cavern. You need to leave. Your people did enough damage to my people. A voice went on inside. We don't want to harm you. Dip pleaded to the creature. You worship Galen, almighty Galen, in great respect. Please let me be. I do no harm to you. The voice continues. No, screw Galen, we don't like him. Dip replies, letting the creature emerge his fuzzy head at the words of Galen's rejection. The creature's hair color is a light silver brown, with its head the size of a softball with perked up ears and black eyes. You spoke bad of Galen. You can't do that. The creature. I'm from the America. I can say whatever I want. Dip replies. America? The creature asks. Never mind. We are looking for someone whose name is Haida. Dip says. The creature asks, who? Which Dip replies, Haida, tall figure like me, has a black skull, shoots fire. Dip replies, Fireman, scary, scary. The creature says now, moving back from Dip among the darkness of the hole. He's not here. We want to find him. Dip says to the creature. Dip listens as the creature's soft feet come closer and closer. Find him, bad idea. You die if you find him. The creature says. No, we have a chance. I have a magic friend. Dip replies. The creature shows its face again from a tiny cave. This time, its black eyes even wider in curiosity. We'll come over here. Show our friend something. Dip says, looking over at Will, who is just behind his shoulder. Will comes and then puts out his hand flat with his palm facing the sky. He then creates a small light orb, the dust inside swirling as it glowed colors of beige and white. Magic man good? The creature says with a higher pitch. Yes, we are going to defeat Fireman, but first we need to know where he is. Is Magic Man Prophet Man? Will Nibbit help Prophet Man? The creature says. Sure, Dip says, looking over at Will. Guess you're a prophet now. Dip ends the conversation, the creature now emerging out of its hole, saying to the two, Nibbit help you avenge Loka. I could hear a whistle from down the entryway, myself pushing my face against the two bars, allowing my eyes to see a world that wasn't behind bars to get a better look. I couldn't see who was walking. My first instinct were the guards. But still, a fear of Haida walking down struck me, much like it struck fear throughout the other captured creatures. I've almost spent 2 days in the cage, myself not being talked to, with my last conversation being with Haida. I'll be back soon with Galen. I say to myself, repeating Haida's final words right before he left. When is soon? What is Galen going to do with me? They have no use for me. I curl back into a ball within my cage, now seeing 2 guards walk by. I looked at them in disgust, noticing again how similar they were to humans. Really similar, with a white tan skin tone, human frame, but dressed in a white cloak. And the head they had, not human, but a wolf's head with an elongated snout with the fur stopping right above the shoulder blades. The guards now left the room, meaning more breathing room for me and other captives in the room. I then started to listen, hearing a conversation from down the hallway pick up in a language I had never heard of, for I think it was a language. I could hear the sounds dimly. Buzz, buzz, does, kuz, pss, buzz. Just a bunch of buzzes in an order where it sounded like words, or a bunch of flies buzzing around. I then turned my head to the left, seeing the shoulder of the woman who was next to me lean against the bars. I have tried talking to her before, apologizing for her brother's loss, wondering if that was accepted in her culture, but with no response, I had lost hope. "We are going to be rescued," I said gleefully her way, myself convincing myself that Dip and Will would be here any second. I didn't get a response from the women, maybe a slight head nod after I spoke, but I could make that up to her hearing a noise from me and not caring for what I said. "If you want to talk, I will be here," I said to her. I then sat in silence, myself feeling defeated as I failed to start the conversation. Nearly an hour passed before I heard something her way. "You wouldn't understand," she replied softly. I got up from my slouched position and was 100% invested into what she could say next. I waited, and after 8 seconds of silence, I knew it was my time to speak. "I can try. I won't fully get it, but I can try," I said. "No, you won't," she replied again, now shifting her body further from me, myself knowing I might not get another opportunity to speak with her. "I have a brother. I just met him almost a year ago, even though I felt like I've known him my whole life. And in that 1 year, we got really close, and now he's gone. I don't know if I'll see him again, if he's alive, if he even knows where I am. So I feel like I'm losing him, and the longer I sit here, the more and more I can feel myself losing him, again, with no chance to ever see him again. So I understand that," I said to her. "My older brother died trying to protect me from the freak that has captured us." I heard a reply back from the women. "He gave everything for me, and I couldn't do a thing to save him." She continued, "That's correct, you filthy animal, and if you continue to act like your brother died an honorable death instead of a filthy ash-filled one, then I will share you the same fate as him." A voice went, "Haida." I could see his sleek and lengthy appearance drag down the hallway, smiling at the women in the cage who stared at him, her eyes focused and ready for any moment to attack. So feisty. Haida went, then opening his palm and shooting a flame under her cage. I could hear her scream and bang her body against the cage as her body started to be stroked by flames. After 5 seconds, I yelled at Haida, "Make it stop. Stop what you're doing." Haida smiled at me, the light from the flame beside me dying, and I could hear the women start to pant in breaths of relief. "You made a friend with Agon. Maybe he'll want to be scorched too one day," Haida said to the women. "What do you want?" I said to him. "Well, I believe you showing me the powers you have is off the tables, and so I won't try. Galen will have better plans for you to show your hidden strength. However, I need help to learn what from your planet is this," Haida said then, turning around and grabbing a skull from one of the guards who walked away right after. I looked at the skull, which was long in his hands, appearing as if it was crocodile skull with the row of teeth and slim but long mouth. But the size of it was too big. Even with Haida being around 6 feet, the skull was almost the same length of his body, meaning it couldn't be an animal from Earth. And that's because it wasn't, that had come from the egg Will had found. The animal that ripped up Thurston, that an army couldn't kill, that the only way to defeat it was sending it through a portal to this planet. Take your time in identifying it. I'm sure you know what it is. Took my people quite a long time to capture it, even longer for me to slowly burn it alive, Haida said. "Why did you burn it?" I asked him. "Reminded me of lesser beings. That's what I think of your planet, lesser to the one Galen has created. This is the greatest world that could exist." Haida went looking around the room while every creature remained silent in their cages. Cheer for Galen's creation. Haida went, lighting his arms again and then pushing them out, shooting flames. Each one lit right under a cage of an entrapped creature, myself including. The entire room filled with screams in pain as each and every being tried to escape the engulfing heat. A few seconds passed, which felt like minutes before the flames for everything started to die. Tell me where it came from, or lights go up again. Longer. Haida went. This comment got grunts and growls from other creatures. It's an alien. It came from another planet, not Earth. I said to him. Not Earth? Haida asked. Yes, we call it alien life. Other species besides the one on our planet that exist only on other planets. Other Earths around in space. More places to conquer once we take over Earth. Galen's rule will extend past the stars. Haida cheered. Haida then looked at me, showing a sly smirk in his blackened teeth and skull. He then laughed, throwing the skull in the air and creating a bright bolt, shooting at the skull and smashing it into thousands of pieces, the debris ringing off the metal cages. Till Galen arrives, Haida said as he walked down the room, leaving. How much longer? Will groaned to Nibbit as a vine wrapped around his ankle, tripping him. Dust exploded when he hit the ground as Dip and Nibbit looked back at him. Will now reached for his ankle, unraveling the heavy vine and feeling a lingering shot of pain coming back moment after moment. Please tell me you're still healthy to continue, Dip commented, noting that the front of Will's shirt had changed color from how much sweat had left his body. Healthy, healthy? Nibbit went, showing the outcome he wished for Will. Do we have any water, anything to drink? Dip asked Nibbit, noticing how dirty the light brown fur coat had darkened since leaving the cave. Nibbit now looked around. Bati, this way. Nibbit said out loud. Bati? Dip asked. Batiquitos, waterhole, for drink. Nibbit finished. The creature then went down past more foliage as Dip turned back to Will, who had started climbing up a tree trunk for the support to stand up again, and with a straightened knee would be fully standing once again. Hey, He let out a slight pain as he put the first bit of weight on the ankle. You okay? Dip asked. Enough to kill, asshole, Will said, pushing through. Will and Dip both figured out they were close to a resting place when the foliage around them started to become a different color. For miles in the woods, it was green plants, with some containing bits of yellow in them. But as they got closer and closer to Bati, which was Nibbit's word for watering hole, the colors on the plant became more vibrant. One eye catching one was a large pineapple-like tree, which trunk was bright orange and round with the leaves on top fanning out in bright red leaves with the end containing a bunch of cherry-like fruits. Dip and Will eat those, Nibbit said, a somewhat hesitant Dip plucking one off, and before eating watched as the careless Will took a handful and pushed them into his mouth. It's not poisonous. I've had this fruit before, Will said to Dip, who was still hesitant. Dip then pulled the fruit, which he noted was squishy, and popped one in his mouth. He noted it tasted like a sweet berry, then chewing down into the skin and feeling the liquid gush inside. That's really good, he reacted. He felt like the fruit had a cherry-like taste, but sweeter and smooth. That it was a little bit chilled and made his mouth tingle in excitement for another one. And so Dip did, dragging the branch down and collecting as many that could fit in his hand. The amount he collected was around 10, before he noticed the 11th had dropped out of his hand. Dip now found Will and Nibbit looking among the small lake, seated upon a rock. Good, right? Will said, taking a bite of the fruit he had collected. Dip nodded with a mouthful of the fruit as Nibbit threw another in his mouth that he had collected. Dip now stared out at the lake, the water still allowing for him to see into it through the crystal water. The bottom of the lake seemed to not have much. The sandy beach which surrounded the lake were the same as the lake bottom. Dip noting that no fish were present as well. And finally small pockets of bubbles would come up to the surface from where gas had passed through under the sand. How much longer till we are to Nick? Will asked Nibbit, who was massaging his tiny fur-covered rabbit-like feet. Close, very close. 10 more miles through trails. Nibbit responded to his question. They rested for nearly an hour, during the time seeing a deer-like animal with antlers coming out the side of its head instead of the top, take a drink from the lake, eventually being well enough to leave the lakeside and continue their journey. Look up! An excited Nibbit then pointed to the sky after another couple of hours of hiking through the forest. Will and Dip followed the teddy bear like finger to the sky, seeing the gray guard tower of where Haida set his castle. They approached slowly, careful not to alert any of the guards which circled the perimeter of the building. Finally, they saw an opening, a door off to the side made of oak wood, different than the gray brick which made up most of the castle. They entered, going through a hallway and entering a large hall. They looked around, Dip, Will, and Nibbit waking through the middle of the room. To their sides were cages with creatures entrapped inside. Made it. Nibbit went as pranced down the hall. Friends are here? Dip and Will cautiously walked down the path, the pattern of creatures looking up at them as they went past. Finally, they reached the end. Nick? Will cheered as he rushed to his cage. He grabbed the cage, pushing it a little bit, which startled me, but otherwise I was in good spirits for my long-awaited freedom. Will then looked up, shooting an orb at the chain which dropped the cage as I felt my bottom colliding, causing a small bruise. Then, another smaller energy orb shot at the gate lock, opening the cage. I crawled out, looking up at my brother who had freed me. Let's go, Dip said. We'll make the portal. He finished. Will then looked around the room, Nibbit looking around too at all the creatures still in their own cages. I finally got a good view of the room as well, the entrapped inmates totaling 12, 6 on each side with myself included. We can't help them without alerting the guards to our location. Dip said, they might be on their way already. Will then looked over at me, seeing that some of my clothes were now torn and blackened by the torment of Haida. We have to help them. Will went, shooting an orb, breaking the lock of the creature that was imprisoned in front of me. The creature went out of the cage, its white fur puffed up as it looked at Will cautiously, then turning and running out of the room. That's going to get spotted. Make this move quick, Dip said to Will. Will nodded, moving down the row and blasting the locks, one to Will's left, then spinning around and shooting the lock off the cage where I sat next to. Then came out the women, herself looking at me and then at Will, tears of joy coming from her releasement. Will continued down the hall, blasting another door, then another. Outside, I could hear guards start to howl. Dip's response was yelling at Will, "Create the portal and let's get out." Will looked down, putting out his hand and opening a portal 3 feet wide, myself telling the creatures to move it, go through the hole in the middle of the room, sure, it's safe. And pushing the creatures through one by one. Will continued with the cages, blasting the first, second, third, and then the fourth one left, the final creature running down the hall and diving through the portal. I was just about to go before it closed abruptly, myself going back as it collided into itself, vaporizing. I looked over at Will, who was no longer in the middle of the room, but instead stood Haida. So you did tell me the truth. Now I can just kill the worthless thing you are. Haida said to me, then looked over at Dip. Brave being to travel this far from home. Sad this would be your last trip ever. Haida then shot a ball of fire at me and Dip, which split 5 feet in front of us and striking in our chests. I was flung back, my head landing first on the tile ground as I rolled around, now struggling to stand up with my hand holding my throbbing head. I then moved back against the room's wall, a column hiding Haida from me. I looked down, seeing Will, who had leaned himself up against a wall holding his arm. I walked over to him, gunshots now going off across the other side of the room. From the distance, I could see Dip curled behind a column, turning and firing down the hallway. I looked to where the shots traveled, Haida raising his hand and another fire shooting out. Breaking the column, Dip used as cover in a moment, pushing Dip to the ground again. Now Haida was pushed against the wall, myself looking behind and seeing Will, who had regained his strength enough to shoot an orb at him. I then looked at the entrance to the room, 2 guards entering and coming at us. Will saw them and put out both hands, spear-like objects shooting through the air and impaling the dog-headed freaks. "Let's go. Back of the room." I could hear Dip yell out from behind. Me and Will turned, rushing toward when a stream of fire came in front of us. I looked to my side. Haida with his hand up, creating a beam to not let us pass. Haida then started to turn his hand, the beam coming closer to us as me and Will backed up. A gunshot then came out, then another. Dip striking Haida with the rifle, looking over to us and yelling, "Get to the room in the back, get out of here." We followed his command, moving to the back of the room. In the corner, we saw Dip, separated by the open space as we all hid behind columns. "We need to leave," I told Will, who nodded, starting to open a portal while I looked back at Dip, Haida now coming to the middle of the room. Haida then lifted its arm, shooting another beam of fire at Will's portal, himself yelling as if the portal were his own skin that burned. Dip now looked over and began to open fire on Haida, who turned its direction to Dip after the rifle bullets fell at its feet. A stronger beam of light now came through at Dip, who tucked into the column for cover. The column lit as if it were wood covered in gasoline. I looked back at Will, who had now created the portal, telling me, "Go through, then I'll get Dip." "Not without you. We leave together." I argued back to him. Will nodded, now putting his hand up to Haida and shooting a spear of energy at him, which struck him back. Dip looked down at the being laying on the ground injured, firing upon it with Will yelling at him, "Make it to our side." Seeing the opportunity, Dip holstered the rifle on his back and went, making halfway through before a fireball struck him, pushing him against the wall at the end of the room. Will looked down the hallway, seeing a weakened Haida use all of its strength to make the fireball. Will put out his hand and shot a beam at the being, Haida returning fire. The room lit up in colors as I looked over at Dip, who appeared like the full amount of sun was on him. He was bleeding from his face, his mouth covered as he gripped the side of his chest, damages from the strike. The light then stopped, myself seeing Haida be flown back as Will had overpowered his beam. Will rushed over to Dip, who laid on the ground, his face now filled with blood, and a panting, scared Will went, "It's going to be okay. I'll get you out of here." Will then grabbed Dip's hand that he had put out, the other hand holding his stomach, myself seeing the loose rib pushing against his skin. From behind, I could see Will tremble, then a blinding light startled me. My eyes readjusted, a beam being shot into Dip from Haida. I continued to watch, his body melting instantly as if it was wax next to a lit wick. "You're nothing without the true power myself and Galen can give you. The human's death is the consequences of your resistance to that truth." Haida yelled furiously, beaming into Dip's body more and more. "I'll kill you." Will went now shooting a beam again into Haida, a gash formed into the shoulder of his being. I then grabbed Will, telling him, "We have to move," and forcing him through the portal. I landed on the dirt, Will looking up at the portal which closed as we passed through. I looked around us now, seeing the animals once entrapped with me now standing in a prairie, the creature Will and Dip approved with talking with the girl that was imprisoned beside me, surrounded by mountains. "I could have killed him. I should have killed him," Will yelled at me, then backing away and laying on the ground. "I'm sorry, Dip." He started to wail as I watched him, both hands covering his face. I gave him space, the animals and creatures now forming a circle around him, almost forming a room of privacy for us. I then knelt beside Will, him grabbing me saying, "You're the only one I have left now."